Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the almost Christmas edition of the Jim Cornette Experience. Our Broadways are back, baby. And Bryan Danielson played Santa Claus for the wrestling fans this past week, while Vince McMahon has completed his transition into the Grinch. And joining me now, you hear his laughter in the background, Hawaiian Bryan, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's the 60-minute man of podcasting. He only grabs a hold during commercials. The great Brian Last, everybody.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again. And of course, there were a whole lot of commercials this week during wrestling, specifically during one of the best matches to air on wrestling in quite a while, but we'll have a lot to talk about.
But it's commercial television, and if we get stuff like that on a regular basis, we'll put up with it. But boy, howdy, I tell you what a week it's been. And pardon me if I don't know, I have no frame of reference of time or day or whatever, because I've been in the twilight zone. It was just last week that we all here in Kentucky were almost blown off the face of the map last weekend. And then for the last 5 days, I recorded the drive-through with you. That's your program. Did 2 full days of cameos for the Cult of Cornette faithful with Hotchkiss Featherbottom. I'm recording another program with you today, so that's 4 days in a row of talking. I'm almost tired of hearing myself. We've been keeping up with my mother-in-law's surgery. I've shipped the rest of the packages, and we've started the procedure of contacting people that in Australia and New Zealand and a couple of screwy addresses and getting those confirmations. I slept at some point in there, but I'm not sure. And now it's wintertime, so it's dark when I go to sleep and it's dark when I get up. So I don't know what the fuck. I don't know whether to whine my ass or scratch my watch.
Scratch your watch. I think that's the better option.
Okay. Anyway, this is the first first run Jim Cornette Experience of 2021. As for the next 2 weekends, Christmas weekend and New Year's weekend, my God, even you, Brian Last, Simon Legree of the Arcadian Vanguard Empire, are not enough of an Ebenezer Scrooge to get us to work on those weekends. So we're going to be on the bus for the next 2 weekends on the Experience. Is that right? With some of the stuff that the Cult of Cornette has been actually not even asking for. I don't know if that's too polite a word. They've been demanding these omnibuses. Am I correct in assuming this?
Every single thing you have said has been correct, with the exception of comparing me to a slave owner. That's the only part I'm taking an exception to, but the rest of it's all correct.
Well, I've had feedback from Jay Sharknado and Kippelman, and they seem to paint a different picture of that business relationship. But nevertheless, so yes, on the Experience next 2 weekends, happy holidays, everybody. We're going to be on the bus, but the drive-throughs will continue to be new without interruption, because we're still crazy and we just can't take time off no matter how much I beg. So the drive-throughs will have the up-to-date current information over the next couple of weeks, and the Experience will be reliving great moments from the past year. And want to give an update. Thank you, everybody who tweeted and sent well wishes and everything. My mother-in-law, Stacy's mom, got through her surgery apparently very well, from what the doctors said. It was not an easy thing to do, apparently, and this is not something that you would have wanted them to do, I understand, like even 10 or 20 years ago. But so she's doing well. And right before she went into surgery, because I had tweeted that the drive-through was going to be delayed this past week, because we had just found out about this surgery like moments before we were going to record one day, and we put it off, and then they put her surgery off, and blah, blah, blah. So I'd had time to tweet and say the show will be late, and Stacy's mom's having surgery, and thank you, if anybody can send well wishes. Point is, she got a chance to hear about some of this before she went into the surgery, when some of the fans, since I'm the king of Castle Cornette, that makes Stacy the queen. Stacy's mother has now been named on Twitter by the Cult of Cornette members the Queen Mother. And that just tickled her to death. And she, as she was being wheeled into surgery, she had visions in her head of wearing big, impressive looking hats and being wheeled down the street and doing the parade wave. And as the confetti falls, here comes the Queen Mother. So that was nice. That cheered her up, and she got through all that. But she loved that stuff.
And how was Prince Philip?
Prince Philip ain't doing too good. Prince Philip is not good at all. No, he had a terrible case of whooping belch over the weekend. But anyway, so thank you guys for checking in on that. And she's still going to be in the hospital till past Christmas. So we will attempt to figure out a way to take Christmas to her. And well, we're 2,000 miles away, but the whole family, you know what I'm saying? They're going to try to bring Christmas to her, but we'll keep you updated there. And the Cameo update. We got all the cameos knocked out from Christmas Cameo Chaos over the past 2 days, and a lot of nice reviews came in. So I believe and hope that everybody liked those. And Hotchkiss Featherbottom did a wonderful job as usual. And I'd mentioned this, but I hadn't made up my mind at what I was going to do what with until we went into this. But since we didn't do a real big fundraiser for anything this year on Cornette's Collectibles, because we were closed most of the year because we were swamped with what we did have. I know Jacked Up Jeremy Bagley and some of the OG Cult of Cornette members did the Crusade for Children fundraiser for my 60th birthday this past year, but we didn't do anything on the website really major. So I decided after we did 100 cameos, and after the split with the fine folks at Cameo and taking care of Hotchkiss and, his 17 needy children by 15 different women, that's a different story for another day. We had 10 grand left over. So what I did was I sent 5,000 to the Crusade for Children, 2,500 to the American Cancer Society, and 2,500 to the Humane Society on behalf of and in appreciation of the members of the Cult of Cornette that have basically made everything we've done this year so successful. So, and somebody's going to say, wait a minute, what about the tornado relief? Well, I've just told you the past 4 or 5 days, I haven't had a lot of free time. And I didn't, on the tip of my tongue or pen, have the best place to send money for tornado relief. And I'm going to be checking on that as soon as we get finished with this show this weekend, so we can send them something too. But I saw actually that on Smackdown they had a plug for the Red Cross tornado relief. And I just obviously saw this just a few hours ago, and had some pictures, a video of the devastation out in, I guess it was Mayfield. But so they were encouraging everybody to text whatever, and I don't text, and it was $10 or whatever. But so I guess the Red Cross is chipping in on this. But the old established charities, who they are. But I didn't know in the past 4 days if somebody had established, okay, here's Tornado Central. So we're going to send something to them too. But on behalf of myself and all the administrative people in the Cult of Cornette, to all of the Cult of Cornette members, thank you. And that's all for you guys and in your honors, what I'm trying to say. And Hotchkiss did something else for me. Do you know what he did?
I'm afraid to ask.
No, come on now. Hotchkiss is not that kind of boy.
What kind of boy is he?
What kind of boy are you? What he did, he did another one of those internet speed tests here on the computer here in the office up in the Fortress of Solitude here, because as you will recall, I was paying for 500 megabytes. But when we first checked it, I was only getting about 213. And then we had the assholes from Spectrum get involved, come out here. Actually, Marvin wasn't an asshole. I believe he was probably doing the best he could. It was the incompetent morons on the telephone that kept screwing him up on the other end. of their company. But when I upgraded and did all this other stuff and upgraded and paid their retail price for 1 gig, which is supposed to be twice as much as 500 megabytes, according to their mathematics. I think they made all these numbers up. Well, then I got all the way up to 600. It was supposed to be 900 and something, but I got up to 600, right? And that's when I gave up dealing with Spectrum, and we started doing the warning spots for the listeners, whereas they're incompetent, they'll steal your money, they'll blow you off. They never called me back. The escalation team, they never did anything to give me what I'm paying for. So I'll just malign them and tell the truth about them until the end of time. And as it's been a couple of weeks while Hotchkiss was over here, maybe I haven't noticed any difference, right? But maybe my speed finally came through that I'm supposed to be paying, that I'm paying for and supposed to be getting, right? So I said, Hotchkiss, sit down there in that big, comfortable, overstuffed chair that doesn't squeak at all and check my speed on the internet there. And he sat down and it starts spinning around. Guess what my speed is now? It was 200 at the start. Then we amped it up to 400 when we plugged the thing in the back and got rid of the Wi-Fi amplifier. And then Marvin got me up to 600 when I started paying for 1 million or whatever the fuck it was. Guess what I had when Hotchkiss checked it over the weekend?
I don't know.
450. I've gone down without changing anything, without unplugging or plugging anything back, without anything happening. I'm paying for a gig, and I got about 35% of that. They're actually drawing my internet away from me. They're sapping my internet. So fuck Spectrum. I have an email here from Zach in Georgia. Dear Jim, fuck Spectrum. A few years back, I was stationed in Texas, and the only available internet on post was Spectrum. Begrudgingly, I bent the knee, and after a year of in-and-out service and constant surprise fees, it was time for my unit to deploy. I called Spectrum and told them to cancel my account because I would be gone for the next 9 months at least. The man on the other end of the line with the thickest Indian accent this side of New Delhi told me it would not be a problem and to enjoy my deployment. Not sure I've ever heard that one before. About 6 months in, I received a letter from Spectrum, saying that my account was going to collections and being handed off to a lawyer for the prior 6 months of services that had never been canceled. When I called and pleaded my case, I was told they had no record of me making any changes to my account, and it's no longer their problem because they sent it to an outside company for collections. Essentially, go fuck myself. So, fuck Spectrum to the moon, and I hope they shove their routers up their ass sideways. A serviceman deployed. They sent him to collections after he canceled his account. Spectrum. Be warned, folks. Be aware. Can you believe that? Can you believe that, Brian?
Sadly, I can. That's one of the problems with these cable companies. They still to this day think, and they do, they can get away with anything, and they do.
Well, Spectrum, I'm going to cost you as many customers as I possibly can. And the more of my internet you suck away while I continue to pay full price for it, the more customers I will suck away from you. That's right, Spectrum. I'm sucking all your customers off.
You may want to consider rephrasing that.
Hey, all right. Anyway, so we talked about, we're going to have an update on the merchandise. As I mentioned on the drive-through this past week, Australia and New Zealand, the United States Postal Service is not accepting packages, first-class mail to your fine countries. We tried, they can't even get in to do the customs form. That's how you can tell they're not accepting them. And so Hotchkiss is helping me out on this, and we are emailing, contacting everybody. All your packages are signed, packed up, and ready to go. So we're giving everybody that's ordered from Australia and New Zealand the option of a refund or waiting until this cloud over all of their mail services passes over and we can send it out, and we'll be doing that. If you haven't heard, you will hear. And we had a few packages kicked back because we didn't have a department number, and we've contacted those people, and there's a few other things that we're clearing up, but all the merchandise is out. The international folks, the last 60 or 70 internationals that went out hopefully will be there by the end of the month. Everybody domestically should have everything except the instances that I just mentioned. And if you've emailed me, said, shit, you spelled my name wrong, or you forgot to put in a pair of old sweat socks or whatever the case, you're going to be hearing from me in the next several days, finally. And my plans for 2022 include throwing my hands up in the air and hiring help. And the store will be open more. We'll hopefully have quicker service, and actually, for the first time in a couple of years, be able to offer a new piece of merchandise. Because it's gotten to the point where I've been afraid to just put anything new out because the stuff that's been on sale for so long still gets slammed every time that we open up. But we're putting systems in place. And by Valentine's Day 2022, we may even, as a matter of fact, have, if you're looking in the market for T-shirts, because I don't have to sign those, we may be getting those up in January and then slowly feeding everything else out there and getting everything up. And then we got some new surprises coming this year. But it won't be as long as it's been, as Mama Cornette used to say, and we'll actually have not only a functioning store and website, but the people behind it to function my functions, because I can't function by myself that well anymore. Brian, you sympathize.
I've heard, yeah.
You have a lot of functions up there yourself.
No, but I function. But I actually get things done.
Yeah, you've got 4 of them. You function too well.
I can do a whole lot more functioning. You have no idea how much functioning I could do.
You're not even beginning to be at the outskirts of your functioning. You have much more functioning capacity left. You haven't even funked half of your functioning.
I can function all over the place. Believe me.
Well, if you got some spare time, are you aware of this? Do you know what has happened while I've been out of the loop of society for the past couple months, sending out merchandise and hosting the most popular podcast in the wrestling world? But you might have seen this. I don't know. I just found out. Always Sunny in Philadelphia has a new season out.
I'm actually a few seasons behind.
So you didn't even know that there was a new season out now because you haven't even seen the last new season.
I haven't. All of my favorite shows, I have not seen the most recent couple of seasons.
Well, now we can't live like savages. I know that we've got busy schedules, but you don't have time for Always Sunny?
I don't have time for Billions. I don't have time for Better Call Saul. I don't have time for Always Sunny. I always got time for the Mets.
I haven't seen Better Call Saul in a long time.
Did you watch that?
Yes. I like.
I'm always surprised when you watch good stuff.
I like Slip and Jimmy, but I haven't seen a new one in quite a while. But I just found that Always Sunny has because the new season finale just aired, and I said fuck, and then I went back. It's on demand, but it's an 8 episode season, so it's not like it's been going for months and months. But for all of you people out there that like warped, freaky television, it's the greatest show. And the great Brian Last is the one who informed me about this. And then you are even farther behind on Always Sunny than I am.
I am. But I love the classics.
What?
The classic episodes. Like all those classic episodes. I will stop what I'm doing.
You love the classics like Great Expectations and Oliver Dickens and...
No, I meant
Oliver Dickens, Oliver Twist, Charles Dickens and...
No.
I mean the classic Always Sunny episode.
I meant like Milk Steak. I meant like I taped over the Spin Doctors mix. I meant all the classic episodes.
Wait a minute. You like milk steak better than rum ham?
I like milk steak with a side of jelly beans better than just about everything.
All right. Anyway, so folks, if you have been looking for it and haven't, you know why I hadn't found it? It's not on FX. It's on FXX. So you have to add an X.
I get FXX all over the place.
FX. No. What is the matter with you? Good God. But no, FXX is a separate and different network under the FX umbrella. And it's another X, and they've put, for whatever reason, they put Always Sunny over there. I guess they're the linchpin of that organization over there. I figured you'd be happy to hear this.
I'm happy to know that they're still doing their show. That's the one thing you always are afraid of. If you're not up to date with something, it just goes away and you didn't even realize it.
I think, honestly, that those four people, regardless of what else they ever do, will just have five with Danny DeVito, will just continue to do that show until the end of time because it's the greatest show on television. And you couldn't, I guess they just figure at FX, since, you know, it's so popular, fuck, we'll just let them say and do all these things because it's just fucking filthy and I love it.
I feel bad for the Dennis Reynolds actor, though, just because I can't see him in anything and not think of him as just a complete sociopath.
Yes. And now that he's aging, he's not as young as he used to be. He looks he can get even creepier.
Remember when, I'm sorry, now you got me thinking of this show. Remember when Frank was trying to audition models? And Dennis, of course, thinks he should be a model because he thinks he's beautiful.
Yeah.
And he's walking on the mock runway in patties and Frank throws kitty litter in his eyes and he goes, "What are you doing? You can't throw kitty litter." And Mike goes, "Hey, anything could happen on the runway."
I like when Frank bought the beauty pageant and then found out that it wasn't an adult beauty pageant. It was like one of those little kid Honey Boo Boo pageants. And meanwhile, in a subplot, Frank had his face smashed in, so he's got this giant bloody nose packed with fucking cotton, and his eyes are black, and he's tried to put makeup on over the top of it to cover it up, so he looks like Danny DeVito in the Penguin in Batman instead of in Always Sunny. And he comes out and introduces himself to all the mothers of the little contestants by saying, "And here are your contestants who I'm not sexually attracted to in any way."
Who's your favorite not main character, like an Artemis or a Cricket? Who's your favorite who's not one of the main characters?
I love the McPoyles. Anytime
any of them?
Any of them, because it's like when the Darlings used to guest on the Andy Griffith Show. You know, one way or another, it's going to be good. Whether you've got the Darling family or you know, little or Ernest T. Bass or Charlene Darling's wanting to get married or whatever something, it's always good. So anytime the McPoyles are figured in, the courtroom scene. The courtroom scene when the fucking old man McPoyle took his hat off and the bird flew out and fucking gouged out the attorney's eye. You know, a lot of people out there are going, what the fuck is this fucking show? Anyway.
If you ever wonder what motivated Jim to look into bird law, it's this show.
I'm just a small town bird lawyer.
All right, we're having fun now. Come on.
Well, let's bring that to a halt. You sent me the clip of Vince McMahon and Austin Theory on Raw. And everybody remembers that as soon as I saw Austin Theory in NXT, I said, my God, this guy is a future superstar. I'm not talking about it. I don't know what they'll do with him with his booking. But at his age, he's early 20s. He's got the size, he's got the physique. He's an amazing natural worker to me. When I watch him, he's picked up the little things, not only basics, but I'm talking about things you can't teach, just natural reactions and the little things that go on in the ring with a really natural worker. I think he's got everything, right? He just needs to get bigger and blossom. So naturally, the only thing worse than Vince not seeing anything in him, apparently, is Vince seeing something in him. Because now on Raw, he's been taken under Vince's way. He was the guy that stole the $100 million golden egg.
My egg.
My egg, yes. And then brought it back with basically no punitive measures after Vince was ready to eviscerate whoever had stolen it, but he took it because he wanted a selfie with it. So now Vince likes his spunk. I like her spunk, kid. Say it for me.
Spunk on my egg.
And so now he's doing recurring things with Vince, which and I saw this clip. Austin Theory is doing everything he can with what he's being given to work with, but basically he's sitting there and having to react to things Vince is saying rather than saying his own shit. And therein lies the problem: is he's just sitting there at the desk with Vince, nodding up and down when Vince does what you're doing.
It's like, he just sits, and he's slouched over. I mean, I'll let you keep going.
That's the thing, is that what you're I don't know whether you're doing an impersonation of Vince or whether Vince was doing an impersonation of you doing an impersonation of Vince or whatever, but you sound clearer than he does.
Yeah, there's a pencil. Yeah, pencil. Yeah, hold a pencil.
And the whole subject matter of this was Vince basically saying, I'm going to show you, Austin Theory, although not nearly this clear, the most dangerous weapon in the world. And he pulls a pencil out of his fucking desk drawer and he says, not this end, the point, but this end, the eraser, the old eraser. The booker has the pencil and the pencil has the eraser. It's an inside wrestling joke that's 75 years old. But the performance of this is what we got to talk about. And I'm not trying to make fun of Vince, because now this is sad. Because I know everybody has to age and everybody has to get older. And I am too. And that's another reason why I can't do the shit I used to do, which is another reason why I'm not trying to do it. But this is sad because Vince used to be the guy with the booming voice, the authoritarian, stentorian tones, the projection. You could hear Vince, when he was walking down the hall in Titan Tower with anybody with him, he was still working. He was having a walking meeting. And if you were in your office, 50 feet down the hallway, you could tell that Vince was at the elevator because you could hear it, pal.
Hey, pal.
Yeah, we're going to put this in. Hey, how you doing there, Chief? How you doing, Strongbow? Whatever. And he was a pronunciation freak to the point where if you said WWF, he would, if he was anywhere around, he would go ballistic. If you go back especially in the early and mid 90s, when JR came in and I came in and Lawler came in, probably the only thing that none of us had a Southern accent on until JR had his Bell's palsy was the phrase WWF. Because he would make you stop and do it again if it wasn't live, if you said W instead of W.
It's W, not W.
WWF. But now
I hate George W. Bush. It's W.
I can't understand what Vince is saying. And I had to watch this twice to pick it all up. And it's not only is he not projecting, but you can tell as you mentioned, he's kind of stooped over, but he just doesn't have the force behind his words. He doesn't have the surety, the assuredness behind what he's going to say. He's kind of mumbling around about it. He knows in his mind what he's trying to do, I'm pretty sure, but it's not coming out like the old Vince. And, it's a lot of people that are, is there any new WWE fans? Are they all just flooding away, or are some coming in? Anybody that sees Vince over the last year or two, maybe, and any time in the future, is going to wonder for the first time. They're going to wonder, well, this is the Vince McMahon I've heard all about. Well, he's just, I mean, there's no force there. There's no life there. He's trying to tell this story that he gets, but other people ain't getting it. And it's not good, I don't think. And I'm not taking pleasure in saying that, but at some point, please, Vince, you've got all the money, all the property, go put your feet up, relax, have somebody else do something. It's sad at this point.
Yeah. And, beyond the way he appears and the way he sounds, he's lost his ability, at least to me, to be captivating. It's more of a freak show. I'm watching it like, I can't believe this is Vince McMahon. I can't believe he allows himself to be seen like this on TV. His posture, his makeup. I don't know what has happened to his face.
Oh.
But it looks like he visited Madonna's plastic surgeon. He looks weird. You can't understand what he's saying. And it takes him longer to do what it used to take him a shorter period of time to do. It feels like.
Yes.
In this segment.
Yes, that's it. It's not coming out. It's dragging. And you mentioned the word captivating. Regardless of what Vince was doing, even if it was preposterous in the Attitude Era, when he was on television and he was talking, you were listening to what he was saying and you were following it and you wanted to hear the rest of it. I think that's fair to say, because he was one of the biggest stars on the television program when it had the biggest ratings it's ever had. So he was captivating at that. This is not captivating. It's like, did you ever see the South Park where they brought Rod Stewart out for the concert and they wheeled him out in a fucking wheelchair because he was 90 years old and hey?
No, but Vince is starting to remind me of Sumner Redstone. I don't know if you know who Sumner Redstone. You must know who he is. When he would eventually his hair turned orange and he was getting wheeled around everywhere, and it's just everyone knows it's over, but he's still running the company for no good reason, and then his daughter takes over. But I mean, we'll see what happens in this case. But
it may be questionable now to whether it's going to be the daughter or the adopted son, Nick Khan.
Yeah, or the Rock's buddy. We'll see what happens. But with all we're saying about this, it's not a good position to be put in, I wouldn't think. But I'll give Austin Theory credit. I think he's doing as good a job as you could do in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to sit there and nod and throw in the line every once in a while that you're being told to say. But hopefully his in-ring talents will carry the day here, and at least if Vince wants to interact with him on screen, that means they want to push him. That means they see that there's something there, and that's a positive step so far.
Let me see you behave like a dog, like a rabid dog. No, goddammit! Ah!
Don't bark! But anyway, woof, woof. Well, I'll tell you what, Vince used to have that habit. And I've seen him do it a million times. In the back of the limousine, going to the garden, in the back of the limousine, going anywhere, to the airport, whatever. In meetings, in the car, on the way to a town. He will take out of his briefcase that 1970s style Norelco fucking electric shaver, and I think JR put it best one time. He said, Vince, are you mad at your face? Because he would gouge his face with that electric razor to get and I know he had to shave 3 times a day, because if he's doing it in front of me at fucking noon and I can't see a goddamn whisker, I know he had to do it that morning before he left the house, right? And he would just gouge his face. I wonder if he still does that.
I don't know if he could do it with that face. I don't know what kind of rubber is in his jaw right now, but I don't know if you could just jam something and rub it like that, like an electric razor.
No, that's just for when he's on TV. After the TV show, they take a chisel and knock all that stuff off, reveal his regular face. But I wonder if he still does it. But I wonder if he knows that he doesn't have to, because now we're not living in the 60s and 70s with the Norelco electric razor. We're living in the world of manscaping with Manscaped. See what I did there, Brian?
Yeah.
And it is the season not only to be nice, but also to smell good and look clean. And that is the mission of Manscaped. It's the holiday season. It's stocking stuffers. They've got 1 million of those. Folks, Manscaped can fix you up, whether it's the 4 million men worldwide that have been served already, or whether it's, that's by the way, that's 8 million testicles, 4 million men. Just do the math. Well, give or take, because, then there's a stray Hotchkiss in there. But anyway, but there's more than that. There are many more balls than that in the world that need manscaping. And whether it's their best-selling product, the Performance Package 4.0, which has the lawnmower body trimmer, the best trimmer on the market for every place on a man's physique, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, and their liquid formulations like the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, the Crop Reviver Ball Toner, and the free gifts that come with the Performance Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxers, the Shed Travel Bag. You can get that. That's the best-selling package. But stocking stuffers, the Manscaped 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. It kills 2 stenches with one solution. The Manscaped cologne-infused body wash, the Shears 2.0 luxury 4-piece nail kit, the Crop Mop ball wipes. And not only can you wipe balls with these, but you can actually wipe other things as well. It's not just a ball-dependent formula. So you can clean up on the go with it. Well, no, sometimes people might say, well, I can't use that on my nose or my chin because it's for your balls. But balls are human too. Anyway.
My God. And
the Manscaped Signature Cologne, that stuff, boy, you can smell that coming a mile down the road. It smells so good. You know that a successful and suave and deboner gentleman is coming down the road when you smell that Manscaped Signature Cologne. The formulations are all vegan. That means if you're a vegan, you can still eat and or drink all of these things. They're also cruelty-free. Or wait a minute, you can't really eat or drink all of these things, can you? Well, I wouldn't think you'd be able to eat.
Don't eat, don't drink. Use these products as you are instructed, which is very simple. It's a very easy instruction. Use it externally on specific areas of the body. Don't ingest anything. Let's be clear.
But it says it says the formulations are all vegan, because I was going to say, how could you eat the Lawnmower 4.0, but you can't? That's not vegan, just the formulations that you would drink then, right?
Don't drink any of this.
Don't drink, but it's vegan.
That's not how vegan works. That's not how sentences work. That's not how you should think of the word vegan being applied to products like this. It just means doesn't mean you have to ingest it. It just means it's about the way it's prepared and whatever else.
So it means you don't have to ingest it, but if you do and you're a vegan, it's still okay.
You can't ingest this.
You can't ingest these things at all.
No.
Okay, well, we know that now, but they're vegan. And they're also cruelty-free. So there's no cruelty about these items whatsoever. It's nice to give these items to people. They're dye-free. I don't know how that they get the color in there. I guess they're naturally colored. Sulfate-free and paraben-free. Is paraben is wax, right? No, that's paraffin.
That's paraffin, yeah.
Well, what is the paraben? Hold on here. Let me get the American Heritage Dictionary.
No, you did this and you couldn't find it. You couldn't find it in your dictionary.
Is that what I looked up before? Because that was still puzzling me.
I think so.
Well, nevertheless, it's all free of all that stuff. So if you don't want products with stuff in it that you don't know what the fuck it is, you get the Manscaped stuff because it's free of that. Anyway, there's none of this stuff that we don't know what it is in this stuff. But anyway, folks, the lawnmower, the weed whacker, the shears, all these things. Trim it off and then use the shampoo and conditioner and body wash and ball wipes and everything to keep what's underneath all of that foliage smelling and looking good. Manscaped.com/JCE. You get 20% off and free shipping. 20% off and free shipping. Manscaped.com/JCE. And stuff everybody's stocking with something that will make them smell good in all of their areas, whether covered or exposed. Manscaped.com. Well, I guess we found out in the last several days it was a Merry Christmas at the Steen/Owens household, or it will be. Now we talked about Steen. Kevin Owens has re-signed, not resigned, but re-signed with the WWE. See how I pronounce that there? WWE. See, Vince, some things you taught me, I just can't break the habit. And we were shocked because we thought he's going to go and play with all of his friends. And we remarked about this on the drive-thru this past week and said, well, they must have made him an offer that he couldn't refuse. And come to find out now, as more reports are coming to light, we haven't seen the paperwork, but it's alleged, and I haven't seen Mr. Owens shouting from the rooftops that it's bullshit, that he's making between $2 and $3 million a year for multiple years. We don't know how many. Is this what you saw, Brian? Is this the report that you saw?
I've seen reports saying anything from $2 to $3 million per year.
Ha!
But of course, no cut clause in the contract.
Well, but that is something else that was said also. There's not a no cut clause. That gave me cause to pause about the clause. But $2 to $3 million a year on the surface of it, I'm sure that Kevin is happy, but you've got to think the way that this has progressed over the last couple of years. Let's back, and then we'll talk about the no cut here in a second. In 2019, before AEW materialized on television, when they knew it was coming, but they hadn't seen it yet, that's when the WWE were making big offers to even mid-card talent to stay. And some did and some didn't. Remember, FTR said, fuck it, we're going to get out of here because you've buried us long enough. And they went to a different graveyard.
And if they hadn't done that, they would have been released with everyone else who had WWE had tried to sign during that same period of time.
Yes, because Gallows and Anderson, on the other hand, said, well, fuck it, we'll take this large amount of money. And then they got let go, 3 months later? Because once that the former upper echelon folks, this was before the change to the cons, when the previous upper echelon folks and everybody saw AEW materialize, they figured, and rightfully so at that point in time, holy shit, we ain't got anything to worry about. We were trying to fucking throw money at people for nothing. And that's when they started letting everybody go that they'd overpaid before. And then there was a change at the top. And since then, they've gone on a firing spree that is, I guess, is pretty well unprecedented in modern wrestling history, because no promotion has ever had that many people under contract to let them go and still be able to field a team, right? So now that they have made everybody nervous and insecure and pissed off, all the talent that is, well, maybe some of the fans too, under the new administration, now they've lost NXT, basically. They might as well just change it. Instead of NXT 2.0, they might as well say the promotion formerly known as NXT. They've run off everybody's favorites from there. They lost Danielson. They couldn't entice Punk to come back in the fold. And now they need to worry about AEW, because they've not just let talent go from the WWE roster that the WWE they didn't want to use and they didn't figure it was, any good to them. They have let a number go that are very valuable to AEW. And now we're in a promotional war again, apparently, because now they've let so many difference makers go or potentially be free to go that now we're back in a promotional war. Because I'm not even trying to knock him here. I've always said Kevin Steen could work and could talk, and how he's been booked is not necessarily his fault, whether good or bad. I'm sure he's complained about it a bunch, unless he's changed completely. But that Kevin Steen is getting $2 to $3 million a year indicates two things. Number one, there's actually three things. Number one, there's an incredible shortage of talent in the industry to begin with. Number two, the WWE is tired of being embarrassed by having difference makers just handed over on a silver platter to the other side. And number three, we're back in a promotional war. Because if Kevin Steen is worth between $2 and $3 million a year, then what are they giving Roman Reigns? 15 to 20? Because they're doing what they started doing 2 years ago, which is upsetting their salary structure. But now they're really upsetting their salary structure because they have to offer even more money than they were offering before to get people to stay. And for once in this, if Tony Khan was in this bidding war, for once he did the smart thing. When it got to anything over $2 million a year for Kevin Steen, he said, keep him. Because that may be a tactic they're trying also. Well, let's see if we can bid some of because let's face it, the WWE has tons of financial resources. Maybe they're trying to bid these guys up thinking that he would just be the modern day Eric Bischoff and spend money like a drunken sailor to sign up all the stars and then have an unsustainable payroll, no matter how good he does. And they ain't doing the revenue that WCW was doing in 1999 yet over at AEW, and they still went broke. But maybe they've just realized that the battle of perception is being lost quickly. The more people that go from WWE to AEW television, especially when they were in high-profile positions with their previous employer. And this is all a one-sided thing, too. Is there anybody in AEW right now that the WWE could sign away from them and capitalize on and not fuck up and be a top guy for the WWE? I don't know about that.
And not fuck up? I don't think there's anyone in the world of wrestling now or ever that modern WWE couldn't fuck up.
Well, but okay, let's just real quickly, and then we'll talk about Kevin's cohort in crime, Sami Zayn. But that's a question I'll ask you. Who could leave? There's still several more difference makers, obviously, that could go to AEW. Who could leave AEW and make any difference in the WWE's business right now?
I'll name people even though I don't think they would go there. Obviously, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, make a difference in their business right now. I don't know if an MJF would now.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
See, because AEW has some guys that WWE could sign and build if they did it right for the future, MJF, whoever. But right now, the only difference makers are the ones you mentioned, the guys that would just be going right back home. And they're actually more valuable in AEW than they are in the WWE just because they'd be going back to the same old environment. Can you think of anybody else right now that would make a difference?
Again, like even people at the top of the card, and I know you don't like them, just hear me out. I'm not saying the Bucks, but Omega. He's been their world champion. He's been presented as a top guy there. I don't have faith, even if you are an Omega fan, that if he signed with WWE, they wouldn't completely change whatever it is you like about him. Because they do that to everybody. Punk and Danielson, we know who they are, and they're main event guys. Who else? None of the other guys they released who were there would be game changers. I don't think the Bucks would be game changers. And it's going to sound crazy considering everything I've ever said, if they brought in Cody and Brandy and really went full bore and fed into their ego and kind of went with it, maybe there's something there.
That would fit.
Because those two are hungry.
Those two in that environment as the greedy celebrity couple would fit.
Right. So I think Cody's not outrageous there. I don't think Jericho's a difference maker anywhere at this point. A few years ago, it may have been, I don't know if he would have been a difference maker in WWE, but his stature, I think, in wrestling was a little different a few years ago than it is right now. So I can't say Jericho. Moxley is interesting because he was never Moxley in WWE, and I don't think he could ever go back to being Dean Ambrose. But he's one of the outside picks, I would say, because he's someone who has shown that he can move merch. He pulls numbers for AEW. He was in that top mix, but there aren't too many. I'm sure I'm forgetting someone, and someone's going to yell at me, what about Orange Cassidy?
Hey, if they took old Twinkle Toes, Mr. Olivier, and didn't change anything about him, let him be exactly who he apparently is, can you see the match against Roman Reigns? Can you see Roman Reigns going for a lot of that foolishness? Can you see Twinkle Toes trying to give Roman Reigns the one-winged fairy?
I personally can't see Omega and Roman Reigns.
So I'm telling you, this guy, even if they didn't change anything about him, the people in the WWE, not the office, but the talent, maybe the underneath guys would love to work with him, but the top guys would not go for almost any of his foolishness. And he would fall flat on his ass, because the reason why that he looks somewhat credible in AEW is because everybody caters to the shit that he does, which was revealed in the match with Danielson and Page, because Page has never had a match like that good. And it's because of his opponent. I'm not saying Page isn't good. I'm saying he's had different opponents. You can't can't have a goddamn 4-star match with Ox Baker or whatever, right? But it would be interesting to see Mr. Olivier try to have those extravaganzas he has with any top talent who's not going to go along with his foolishness. But speaking of foolishness, along with Mr. Steen, Mr. Owens, I can't get used to calling him Owens. Apparently his Canadian cohort, Sami Zayn, is re-upping also. We haven't had specific, or have we had confirmation by now? I heard the report come out. I don't know if it was confirmed.
I think it's just a rumor as of right now, but I also think that we've seen in little bits the way WWE presents someone on TV when they think they got him re-signed and when they have no idea and when they don't care. And with Sami Zayn on Smackdown, which we'll talk briefly about shortly, that was a guy who's re-signing. That's the way I took it when I watched him on that show, and his best friend's about to re-sign, and I don't think those two will ever be apart. It's like a boy and his whoopee. They will always be together, those two.
A boy and his whoopee?
Whoopee. You never saw Mr. Mom, I assume. But there's nothing confirmed, but I'd be surprised if he went to AEW at this point.
Well, and now, here's another side of the issue. The people who haven't had the chance to go to AEW as of yet, they're seeing, they're filling up over there. And maybe it might be better that I try to jack these guys for as much money as possible and stay here, because at least then I'd have the money. But there goes we heard that there was a no cut clause in Steen's contract, if that's what they're doing. And what happens then to prevent in 6 months when something else happens or they change their mind again? Oh, you know what? Buyer's remorse, guys. See you later. And then AEW is even more filled up. I can believe taking the money easily, especially that much money. But as we've said, and as I think Tony Khan has been quoted as saying, if you sign a contract with the WWE and there's no cut clause in it, then you're just signing a 3-month contract, right?
You know what? I understand why wrestlers have to do it. If you want to go to WWE, you have to play their game. I get it. But you could ask any lawyer who's ever looked at one of those contracts, and I have, and they'll tell you those contracts are not worth the paper they're written on. You'd have to fight them. You'd have to go to court and really fight them, but they're ridiculous contracts, and they can cut you whenever they have the whim. You're gone. And you have no recourse.
Whim cutting.
I guess so.
That's what they call it. So anyway, we've established we're back in a promotional war. They're trying to keep more attrition from taking place in the WWE. Tony Khan was smart enough not to pay $2 to $3 million a year for Kevin Steen. We don't know what's going on with Sami Zayn, but like you said, the Bobbsey twins will never leave each other. And again, it continues to get interesting. At any given point, over the last 2 years, every 3 months, the WWE will either grab your bags and boot you out the door or offer you millions of dollars a year to stay. And it changes with the direction of the wind. I can't believe they gave Adam Cole any offer anywhere near that. And you can't mean to tell me that you think that Adam Cole didn't have more upside with his track record already in that company than Kevin Steen, who's been there for 6 years. And let's face it, it's still Kevin. And Zayn's more entertaining to me because he can talk his ass off. He was a mute luchador when I was booking him, despite my best efforts to get him to give it up. If I'd have heard promos like that, but anyway, nevertheless.
I was going to say, what about the other way around? If we go under the assumption that $2 to $3 million is top of the line for what Tony Khan wants to spend for any individual talent, and if you got that money, you'd be top of the card. So that's a main event guy. Is there anyone in WWE that it would be worth it for AEW to go after, knowing they have a full roster, knowing they have all these guys? I mean, I don't think a Sheamus helps AEW. No. Does an Edge help AEW?
Not at this point.
Who in WWE would help AEW, looking at what you just did the other way around?
Well, I need the WWE roster in front of me because, so many names running through my mind. But we had mentioned Steen and Zayn just because, they have friendly relations with a lot of the cosplayers on the card in AEW. I think, obviously, Charlotte. For the women's division needs a lot of fucking help over there because that's one thing that the WWE still has is their top girls are better than anybody else's top girls. I'm trying to think of somebody else too.
Because Roman Reigns, more than likely, if you're going to want to get him, that's more than $3 million. And I'm not saying Tony wouldn't break that for somebody if it was the right thing.
Oh, yeah, well, and Reigns, I mean, that's almost an impossible thing because Vince would have to look at that almost like a Bret Hart situation in 1997. You wouldn't just be losing a guy off the roster, you'd be losing the guy off the roster. So I would think they would do anything to keep that from happening, which whenever Reigns' contract is up next, he probably ought to keep in mind.
I don't know. There aren't too many top guys there. I mean, I don't think Rollins would be a big difference maker. I mean, Cena would, but I don't know if that'll ever happen and what you'd actually be able to do with him. Brock?
No, Cena. Well, now we're just going crazy. They can't even get Cena to hardly show up for the WWE. And The Rock, that's why I'm saying another part of this was talent in the wrestling industry is shorter than it's ever been at the top of the card, which is why that some guys who could have never smelled a contract this size are now being offered it because who else you got? And who knows what will happen in 3 months when they decide that they're going to fucking fire 60 more people. But you mentioned Smackdown and we mentioned Sami Zayn, and he's been figured in over the past couple of weeks, and they put in the thing with Brock and Heyman and Reigns and etc. And this past Friday night, the big event happened. Finally, the tribal chief had enough of the wise man. And over the last couple of weeks, I mean, I'll read this in a second, what they had on SmackDown, but over the last couple of weeks, it's a 2-hour television program, but if you just DVR it, and any time that Paul Heyman or Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar shows up, stop and watch, it's the best wrestling program on television. Problem is, it only lasts 14 fucking minutes tops. But, we didn't even talk about SmackDown last week, but the previous week they had a deal where fucking Heyman again was so good. It was just so good. But Sami Zayn was figured into the thing, right? Brock had previously suplexed him and dropped him on his head or whatever. And they had Zayn and Heyman in the ring doing a promo, and Brock came out and Heyman shits himself because we still don't know whose side he's on really down deep. And then Brock sat down and started talking to Sami, and it was kindly babyface Brock, which you can tell even just he was trying to force himself to smile, and that's difficult. And at first, as they were doing it, I was like, fuck me, now they're ruining Brock, right? They're having him sit down and talk to Sami, Canadian to Canadian. Hey, let's go to Saskatchewan. and shoot some moose or whatever they're saying. And I thought, oh, there's this, they can't, they were ready. Brock and Sammy are ready to walk out together and go have a beer or whatever. And I'm like, they can't do this. And just then, Heyman had the reaction that I was having. Wait a minute. What the fuck? And then he takes the microphone back and he pumps Brock Lesnar up. What is this? Saskatchewan besties going out to shoot a moose or whatever? You're the beast. And he fires Lesnar up verbally to where Brock picks Sammy up and fucking gives him the deal again. And Heyman just, he's the hinge on all of this. He makes everything work because he's perfect at interacting with and being the glue that holds this whole thing together. So this week, he's there waiting for Reigns. And did you notice what we said last week on one of the programs? There was a thread to what you were going to see through the whole thing. And that's what they were doing on Raw 20 years ago when everybody watched it. That's what they do. And whereas AEW's television programs, either segment by segment or piece by piece, if a match goes 2 segments, it's all self-contained. And then that's the end. And somebody said, oh, well, you can't do that. You can't have Punk or Danielson on the show 3 or 4 different times. Well, yes, you can. It doesn't mean they have to do a 10-minute interview or have a 17-minute match each time. They do it like this. At the start of Smackdown, Heyman standing there holding the title belt and waiting for Roman Reigns. And a little bit later on in the program, they check back and there comes the limo. But oh my God, it's Brock. And Heyman's surprised. He thought it was Reigns. And then later on, they have them preparing to go out, and then they have them go out. And then they do all their big business at the end of the show. But you knew from the start, something is going to happen with the only people that we really give a shit about here. Is that hard to understand? Brian, why are we trying to have to explain this like it's fucking Chinese arithmetic?
That opening video showing everything from last week with Heyman and Sami Zayn and Brock Lesnar was so good. And it got me really into it. It was just such a well done video. And then I immediately pressed fast forward. And I pressed fast forward until I got to Heyman backstage.
Well, let's tell the people before we go on any further. You see Heyman waiting for Roman Reigns' limousine at the top of the program after that video package that you just talked about. And so now we know shit's going to go on and holy, they've hooked us. And then we got a girls tag team match that didn't finish up until 30 minutes into the program. And then we had the Viking Raiders against Jinder Mahal and apparently some greenhorn named Shanky.
Who?
And
was that? I didn't watch that match at all. Was that really his name?
That's what I heard. Shanky, Skanky, I don't fucking know. By the time that was over, we were 50 minutes into the program. That's when we go back and Paul's still standing there. And I know this exposed the business because there's no way in Paul Heyman's condition at his age that he could stand for 50 minutes in the same place. He obviously had been sitting and then stood back up. But anyway, the limo pulls up and Paul goes to open the door. My tribal chief. And it's fucking Klondike Lesnar. Oh, shit. And there's an awkward conversation between them. And then Brock walks in and Paul gets the fucking quiver lip. And then we go to something involving Happy Corbin and Madcap Moss. And by the time that was over, we were an hour into the show. Then we got Ridge Holland versus Cesaro. I love Cesaro. But after that match, we were an hour and 15 minutes in.
I saw the open, not even open, I guess just everyone in the ring at the beginning of the match. Ridge Holland and Sheamus, what exactly are they? Like, it's like Gangs of New York meets London in the 1850s. What exactly are they supposed to be?
Well, one of them is the illegitimate son of Jack the Ripper. and the other one is Don Fargo when he was using the gimmick where he was from Hell's Kitchen, New York. I don't fucking know. But we also had a live in-ring interview with Naomi. who wants a match with Cruella DeVille. But Cruella had Shayna Baszler jump her and beat her up, so we're an hour and 25 minutes in. Then we had the Usos against the New Day. And when that was over, we were an hour and 40 minutes in. And then here comes Roman Reigns' limo. And now we go to the break, and now we come back, and there's Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman and the Usos coming to the ring. We got 15 minutes left. So now we got down to nut-cutting time. And they did tons of milking of the crowd before they even started the promo, but considering the other programming on this episode, I'll just sit there and watch them stand there. Roman Reigns is great. He's in command of the situation. He has that heelish, condescending look and the way he talks to people. He's not happy with the Usos because they lost the match to the New Day, but there is blood. And then he looks at Heyman and he says, but then my wise man, you're not my blood. Paul's face, just the man with 1,000 faces, Paul Heyman. So Reigns says, you can't be disrespecting me. And he asked Paul all those questions that he's been asking for weeks now. Can I trust you? Did you know Brock Lesnar was coming back at SummerSlam? Did you know Brock Lesnar was going to be at Madison Square Garden? Did you know Brock Lesnar's suspension was lifted? Are you a special counsel or an advocate? And Paul is just, he's smarmy and groveling and nervous. And I mean, if he was 300 pounds lighter, he would be Don Knotts. It was fucking great, right? And then finally, Roman Reigns says, I want the truth. Why are you protecting Brock Lesnar from me? And then Paul screws up his courage and finally replies with all the respect and deference in the world in his voice that he can muster. He says, I'm not protecting Brock Lesnar from you. I'm protecting you from Brock Lesnar.
That was great.
Oh. So there you go. And Reigns fucking hugs him, puts his arms around him. He's got the microphone there so you can hear him, but he said, I love you. Thank you for 40 years of service to my family. And you're fired. And as Paul's face gets shocked, Reigns turns around to walk off and then turns back around and runs and hits him with it wasn't really a Superman punch. Maybe it was a Superboy punch. Maybe even Crypto the Super Dog punch. Because Roman Reigns hit Paul with that. And Paul, you could see right at the he knew it was coming. He's trying not to move. He used to do the same thing 30 years ago when I would grab him to punch him. He'd stick his chin out and become as immobile as a statue. So if it was any kind of potato, it was my fault, right? It was like grabbing onto a fucking trunk of a tree. He was so nervous or whatever. But anyway, Reigns hits the Superman punch. Paul goes down, but his feet didn't leave the ground. That was the lowest altitude ever on a bump, but he went down and he stayed there. And the people blew. And then Reigns has the Usos going to bring chairs in, and they're going to concerto Paul. And my God, not only is that a little extreme, but also the size of Paul's head, I was worried about the chairs.
Will you stop it?
Well, no, but in all seriousness, this was so good. I wish they hadn't gone for the concerto thing because that's a bit much. But, boom, music before they can do it, and here comes Brock Lesnar. And, of course, now the criminals finish committing their crime or stop committing their crime because the police are 100 yards away. But here comes Klondike Brock. And the Usos meet him on the ground, and he kicks the shit out of the Usos, and then he slides in, but Reigns takes the chair to him, but he said, fuck it. Brock just stands up under him and gives him an F5. Boom, and then another one. Boom. And then poor Paul's still laying there like yesterday's wash, and Reigns and the Usos are bailing, and Brock Lesnar's fired up in the ring. That was a fucking angle. And then the last thing that the announcers are saying, my God, can Brock Lesnar defeat Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship? We'll find out in just a few weeks. I mean, That's wrestling. We didn't have to sit through. The people that watched this program live had to sit through an hour and 45 minutes to get to the meat of the matter. But if you just watched that 15 minutes, boy, that was a great fucking program. What'd you think, Brian?
It was tremendous. Roman Reigns was great. Heyman is just on another level. He's the best actor in professional wrestling because a good actor, you can't really tell they're acting. You know he's acting because it's wrestling, but goddamn, he's good. And the way he delivered that line that he was protecting Roman from Brock and then Roman's face, that was great stuff. And I don't know about Brock, the happy butcher or whatever he is now, his fucking outfit. But this was just tremendous. And, you know, this has been the one saving grace for WWE this year that we've seen has been the Heyman Roman Reigns stuff. That's really it.
And that's, you know, I guess that's something, but not much. But anyway.
What do you think's really going on in that head of Paul Heyman's right now? What is he really thinking? He sees everything that's happening in wrestling. What do you think he's thinking?
I think he's thinking that obviously they're spending some money these days, and I'm sure he's probably got the best contract in the company because if there's a legal point to be addressed, you can be assured that Paul Heyman will be on top of it. And he doesn't have to do almost anything physical. I'm amazed that he will put up with the travel, especially to Saudi Arabia. But otherwise than that, he's got to know that, I mean, it's not like he's going to start another revolutionary promotion and change the wrestling world because he knows the wrestling world is fucked. And he's always been smart enough after ECW to either not get into situations where he would look bad, i.e. never going to TNA and having a reason why that made him look like the babyface, or getting out of situations that are making him look bad without getting any on him, like the WWE resurrection of ECW. And he's got to know this fucking business. What the fuck? And, you know, all the shit going on in AEW. He's, I'm sure, happy right where he is, being involved with one of the two top people in the entire industry, with the established industry leader that he knows is not going to fucking go anywhere. And the office is still 30 minutes from Scarsdale. So I think he's happy to stay right where he is and be a brilliant TV performer and not try to drive himself crazy or give himself a fucking stroke trying to save the wrestling business.
Well, it's noticeable that it's his segments that tend to be the best on the entire show. And some weeks the best in the entire business.
He's going to make sure that, I mean, obviously accidents happen, things happen, but he's going to try to make sure as best he can that whatever he's involved in is fucking great. And the other people that he's working with have all their ducks in a row, and then everything else, what happens, and it doesn't reflect on him. I think he's got a perfect spot.
Well, that was Smackdown for this week.
Yep, it was. And I hate to see, because Reigns and Heyman have been so good together. And now here's the thing.
Yeah.
Long term, because Brock ain't going to stick around forever, I wonder long term how this is going to affect Mr. Heyman, because you don't just, he'd go from Roman Reigns to Brock Lesnar and then to fucking Doudrop or whatever. Maybe he could do something with Austin Theory. I don't know if Heyman, and then Paul as a babyface. This will be interesting.
Yeah, is Paul, I guess technically he's a babyface now, right? I mean, Brock's a babyface.
Yeah, well, in name only, but you want Brock to beat Roman Reigns. So if Paul's on the side of the person that the people want to see win, then he's technically the babyface. So let's see how he does. 30 years ago, I was a babyface against him. Let's see how he does now, babyface manager.
I would love to see him as a cheerleader at ringside like you were with the Babyface Midnight Express at Starrcade 88. Hopping around.
Hopping around, firing people up, swinging that racket. But you know what? That's what I was going to say. Reigns and Heyman were such a great pairing, though. Such a great duo. I'm sorry. I just regret that we'll never be able to see them standing there together again. Just that beautiful picture of the wise man and the tribal chief. Will we never see that sight again, Brian?
Well, there is a way that Paul, or perhaps Roman, or perhaps both of them, can have a work done to commemorate their wonderful time together, their wonderful collaboration, and of course the dissolution of this collaboration we just saw, but we can remember the good times with Skylight Frames.
That's exactly right, because even if Haynes and Raymond, or Reigns and Heyman, are no more, we have pictures, we have memories. And folks, if you have pictures and memories that you want to share with your family and your loved ones and your friends and your neighbors, the folks at Skylight Frame can fix you right up. We've been talking about this miraculous technical innovation for months and months now. The Skylight Frame is a photo frame that you can load pictures on and update instantly by email from anywhere. So it's a great way to feel close to those you love, even when you're separated. If you're separated by distance, if you're separated by oceans, if someone in your family is in prison, whatever the case may be, it sets up effortlessly. In under 60 seconds, you plug it in, use the touch screen to connect to your Wi-Fi. Hopefully it's not Spectrum. And you can start sending pictures to the Skylight Frame. It's a nice black frame with a white mat, so it looks like a real picture frame, but it won't just house one picture. It'll house a plethora of pictures. On the gorgeous 10-inch touchscreen, you can swipe through the pictures with your finger, and you can even use your finger to tap the photo and thank the person who sent the picture. And, well, you can use your finger on a lot of things with this thing. It's 100% satisfaction guaranteed. If you don't love it, they'll offer you a full refund. You've been the one to bring to the attention of all the listeners that they will not use your photos that you've preloaded as blackmail if you want to.
No, why do you keep bringing this up? Why do you keep bringing this up?
Well, I figure, sometimes some people would get mean about that. But no, they ask no questions and offer no resistance to give you the refund if you don't love it, but you're going to love it. And all those pictures that people can send, they can be of family and friends and cherished places and vacations and pets, even candid photography. And as we've mentioned, there's been testimonials that some of the people have given these Skylight Frames to their mother. One of the mothers broke down and cried tears of joy. So if you would like to make your loved ones cry for Christmas, get them a Skylight Frame and sit there and watch them start crying when all the pictures of the kids come in. The kids that aren't there because they've said, fuck you, Grandma. No, but sometimes you just can't get to the old family home for Christmas. It's not like they're saying fuck you. But anyway, as a special offer, you can get $10 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com and enter the code DRIVE, SKYLIGHTFRAME.com, the promo code DRIVE for $10 off the purchase of a Skylight Frame. Again, folks, make anybody in the world that you know cry with happiness over all these wonderful pictures. And if the kids really do say fuck you to Grandma and won't go to her house for Christmas, at least she can look at pictures of them.
Skylightframe.com.
Promo code DRIVE.
That's right.
So what are you doing this week on the Arcadian Vanguard Network before we talk about any more current wrestling?
Another fun and action-packed week on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, and things underway right now to ensure a very, very fun and very, very fun 2022. But more information about that in the weeks ahead. Of course, get information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcasts or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A few notes. Many have been waiting for the new Brian Solomon podcast, Shut Up and Wrestle. We anticipate an announcement about this possibly on next week's show, or actually in 2 weeks, I guess I should say. So stay tuned for that. Information about another new show coming very, very soon. But this week, check out a new episode of the Mid-Atlantic Championship Podcast with Mike Sempervive and Roman Gomez, available at midatlanticpod.com. A fun time in 1982 Mid-Atlantic Wrestling. Sergeant Slaughter, Ricky Steamboat, Greg Valentine, Wahoo McDaniel, and so much more. Hear history today at midatlanticpod.com or look for the Mid-Atlantic Championship Podcast wherever you find your favorite shows. Don't forget about Breaking Kayfabe with Baldwin and Barry at baldwinpod.com. And also, Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam at mcadampod.com. All shows available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And of course, the 605 Superpodcast, the Mothership! I'm used to that. Go through the archive today at 605pod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcast. In production right now on the next couple of episodes. Stay tuned for more information. The 605 Superpodcast, the Mothership. Yow.
All right, let's go into the All Elite Wrestling section of the program. And it's going to be a little easier this week because we don't have to review the Rampage program from Friday night, just last night. This is early on Saturday as we speak. And that was December 17th. And we're not going to review that program because it wasn't fucking worth it. But I just they had at one point, pull up the ratings for last Wednesday so when we get to it. But they had at one point apparently over 1 million people watching the program on Wednesday night. And they capitalize on that by on Friday night on national cable television giving the people this program. The Hardley Boys, Bobby Fish, and Adam Cole against Pockets and the Puddin' Gang in an 8-man tag. I'm talking about Muffin Top Taylor. I'm talking about poor old Rocky Romero that's been stuck in there, and Prince back. And, of course, the company mascot. Then, after that match, now that Adam Cole is completely meaningless, Brian, I swear to God, I'm not making this up. They had a submission match between Ty Conti and Penelope Pitstop. Apparently because Ronda Rousey and Chris Cyborg were not available.
Well, to be fair, Ty Conti is a legitimate trained martial artist, but I hadn't realized this feud. To be fair,
Penelope Pitstop is not.
Yeah, I hadn't realized this feud had even gotten to this point where they went right to a submission match. What happened?
I don't know or care. It doesn't matter. They put it, yes, Ty Conti is a trained mixed martial artist, and Penelope Pitstop is a trained outlaw mud show girl. And they're having a submission match with the girls now. In the history and tradition of Blanchard and Magnum TA, Flair and Funk, Austin and Hart, Conti and Pitstop. And then the main event on the program was Eddie Kingston, Santana and Ortiz, and the Lucha Brothers in a 10-man tag against the ever-popular Daniel Garcia 2.0 and the Acclaimed. That was the entire program.
And I like those guys. A lot of those guys you named, Eddie Kingston, the Acclaimed, 2.0, Daniel Garcia. Every one of those people you just named is someone I enjoy watching. I'm sick of the 10-man and the 8-man tags. And the Acclaimed, the last 2 Acclaimed matches we've seen have been multi-man or multi-team matches. I'm kind of sick of that. You know, I want to do something with Eddie Kingston. By the way, let's talk about that real quick.
Yes.
Eddie Kingston had a lot of momentum. People are going crazy for him. The New York crowd loves him, obviously, but everywhere they're going, people are reacting to him. It's natural. It's
that
real.
article?
He writes that article. People see him in a whole new way. The pops continue, and then they kind of don't use him so much on TV. And now it appeared before, God stepped in and took away Chris Jericho's vocal cords. It appeared that Jericho was about to latch on to Kingston. But the reason Jericho was going to do that is because Kingston is so hot, but they're not doing anything with him. What the hell's going on?
So by the time poor Chris gets back from his tour, the next over person that he was going to sap the attention from will no longer be over. That's what we've been talking about this. They start and stop. Somebody gets over through some, Pillman Jr. with the Dark Side of the Ring episode. And he was a tremendously sympathetic figure and a baby face.
That's a good comparison.
He gets a couple of matches. And boom. And then MJF brought him back into prominence so he could get a win, as he should have in that instance, but at least Bryan was competitive with a guy that is seen as a main event guy, and now he's back, cheerleading for fucking Griff Garrison and Kingston. His Powerhouse Hobbs breaks out for 2 or 3 weeks there, and everybody look at him, and everybody's talking about him and the match with Punk, right? And boom, he disappears. This has been happening. For whatever reason, Tony Khan is convinced that the way to write television with a large roster is to feature somebody for a few weeks, and then they go away somewhere to YouTube or witness protection, and they lose all their momentum. But you see the same job guys doing the same jobs to the same guys every week now. I guarantee you Daniel Garcia and 2.0, and nothing against them.
Yeah, they're good. I actually like them.
But they have wrestled more over the past 3 months on television than better than 50% of the main event roster. And pretty much all of the guys underneath that ought to be getting wins every week. They're doing jobs every week, Garcia and 2.0. The guys that are getting wins every week are the ones you only see a couple weeks at a time and then they go away. They're the ones that should be getting wins every week ongoing. And it's maddening. They get things handed to them by serendipity. But like I said, the Dark Side episode or the Players Club, it's not the Players Club that he was on, Kingston. The
Players Tribune.
There you go. They're an offshoot of the Players Club.
No.
Or just Hobbs or anybody that Punk has tried to elevate or whatever, and then they go away. That's not how you push guys. I mean, not even if they can't wrestle every week, they can be on, they can be involved, they can talk, or they can be talked about, or they can be shown what they did last week, or shown what they did in another venue somewhere. And I remember when Austin was getting over and then had the various injuries, the neck, and then he was back, and then he was out with the knee. It was me. It was Shit Stain at one point. It was everybody in the office trying to figure out ways to keep a guy on television that couldn't even wrestle, but we didn't want to tell the people that he couldn't wrestle. And they figured out, and it got Austin over more than he was before he got hurt, because we had to figure out ways to get him involved.
Yeah, get Kingston in front of the crowd on the microphone on the Wednesday show every week for something. Get that pop. Let people see it. Let people wonder about it.
But so you're correct in bringing in. So Kingston was the leader of the top babyface team here against people that everybody knew. It's like a glorified television match, and they try to heat up all of these things, and in doing so, they heat up nothing. Because everybody that's announced that's going to have a match, you can bet that one of them's going to be back talking to Tony Schiavone and never get a word out of his mouth before the people that he's going to wrestle fucking jump him from behind. Every match, they've set a baseline of chaos is the norm, as we've mentioned. Sometimes, for TV especially, it's fucking free. Book a cold match. And a cold match, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if they still use this term since there are none anymore, but a cold match is an age-old wrestling term for a match without an angle or a heat behind it. That's why it's termed a cold match. You just book two people to wrestle each other, especially on television. And a world title match without an angle is not a cold match. It has the championship at stake, etc. But just a cold match for television gets your talent exposed and allows them to do what they do and get over without destroying the effectiveness of doing angles where people beat each other up before they wrestle. Again, if every match begins by somebody getting a shit kicked out of them in the fucking locker room in the back, then it loses all of its effectiveness and it's just the norm. And that's what they've done. And you have job guys jumping main event stars in the back and beating them up just because they're booked to wrestle on TV next week. Fuck it. Save that shit for when it means something and just book TV matches. It's not like it's going to make any difference because the angles now that they do are so many and so similar to every other one. It's not like it makes any difference in the match or puts any extra heat on it. It's just either Tony or probably also a bunch of the modern wrestlers think that if they're going to have a match on TV, they're supposed to jump the other guy beforehand. That's how far we've gone, to where even the wrestlers think that this is a good thing to do, not just the inexperienced bookers. So as a result, none of this means anything anymore because everybody does it. So chaos becomes the norm. You've established a baseline, and it's... But that's why we're not looking at the fucking Friday night show. I understand, though, Tony Khan has been making some news. Tony has been... And I mean news literally. He's been on a bunch of different news programs and on the case of Fox News in specific, which I kind of like anybody taking the piss out of them. But how did this all get started?
I'm just getting caught up to this too. But apparently FoxNews.com put up an article. The writer is Ryan Gatos. I don't know if he's an opinion writer. I don't know if he's a sports columnist. I'm not exactly sure who the hell this guy is, to be quite honest with you. But the article, I'm going to guess he's a sports writer. Jaguars Urban Meyer drama. AEW excitement cooling off. Part of rough month for Khans. Now, we had previously talked on the show, Jim, about Urban Meyer, who was the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. What was long overdue and what everyone knew was going to happen before the season started. He was just fired by Shad Khan this past week.
Apparently, he was about as popular as Crotch Rot with the football fans and had bollocksed everything up. And so this was, as you said, overdue and expected. So they fired him. That made all the news. And the folks at Fox grouped AEW in with the Jaguars' woes and turmoil.
They did, and I'm scanning through this article right now, and obviously it's talking a little bit about Tony Khan's father and the Jaguars, and I don't think that really pertains to any of this. I'm trying to see where it gets to AEW. AEW had a very successful summer with the acquisitions of CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, and Adam Cole from WWE. AEW shows Dynamite and Rampage each popped with more than 1 million total viewers at their peaks. Dynamite peaked at 1.319 million viewers September 8th when CM Punk addressed fans for the first time, appearing at All Out. Rampage peaked at 1.129 million on August 20th when Punk made his debut in Chicago. Since then, things have cooled off, with Rampage attracting around 500,000 viewers. Dynamite attracted over 900,000 viewers Wednesday for the first time since mid-November, thanks to its Winter is Coming special. As things move into the new year, the Jaguars will be back to square one with a high draft pick and in need of a new coach for the 2022 season. AEW will look to build upon some of the momentum it garnered towards the end of 2021. AEW will have a lot of time to build up its top stars, as its first pay-per-view of 2022 isn't set until March. And that's the article. That's the conclusion. Nothing too bad. Not
inflammatory, not a hit piece, pretty much factual statement.
Go ahead. I was going to say unless, and I'm looking at Tony's tweets, which we'll talk about in a second, unless Tony thinks there's a bigger thing here, unless Tony thinks it's not just some columnist writing an article on a website, unless Tony thinks this is Fox deliberately taking aim at... This is a content producer taking aim at another content producer.
Well, but now wait a minute, because Fox News and Fox Television, the network itself that Smackdown is on, all I know is there's plenty of fucking anti-Fox News on Family Guy, and it's on Fox. So I don't know if Fox News would be doing the bidding of the network division over there, and that didn't sound like a hit piece. If somebody was going to write a derogatory article about AEW, they had a lot more ammunition they could have used, but Tony apparently took quite an exception to what was written, even if it was somewhat more benign than one would think.
He did, and to be fair, and again, we don't know what this fight is, if it's a manufactured thing for Tony to look cool on Twitter, or if there's some deep meaning behind it. But Tony fought back the way I would. Here's some facts, you're an idiot. Boom, there you go. So I can't blame him for that, but here was the first tweet. Hey, at Fox News, it's amusing hearing you opining about AEW ratings, considering AEW Dynamite on Wednesday has beaten every single Fox News show for 6 straight weeks. Here are the recent charts, including this week, to prove it. See you tonight on TNT Drama, 10 p.m., Rampage.
And by the way, I saw that he sent screenshots with that tweet of the charts, and my God, I tried to get out a magnifying glass. These are charts, boy, that he sent. I'm thinking that what he said was true about the viewership, but it was nullified or mitigated a little bit by the fact that you'd have had to got a microscope to fucking read the specific.
Well, you have to click them. You have to actually click them and go to the chart.
I was still trying to fucking look at all that fine print.
Well, he retweeted the charts again. There was a second tweet. That first one was 5:48 p.m. The second one was 5:56 p.m., 8 minutes later. Thanks, Fox News. I appreciate that you've highlighted AEW's ratings when AEW Dynamite on Wednesdays has beaten every single show on your network for 6 straight weeks. Here are a few more charts. Twitter only let me attach 4 weeks worth to my last tweet. See you tonight. So that was tweet 2. There's a third tweet, but what are your thoughts on Tony basically saying, hey, if you're going to bring it up, here's the reality of it.
Well, he should fight back. And I appreciate him doing that. And also it's good to know that people are starting to see through Fox News and their ratings are going down as well.
And then the final tweet, 6:17 p.m. Did you know AEW Dynamite on Wednesdays on TNT Drama has beaten every single show on Fox News for 6 straight weeks? Surely Fox News knows, as they like talking TV ratings, maybe they should focus on their content instead of playing bore on the floor. See you tonight on AEW Rampage. So there, within a half hour, 3 tweets, which made this an issue. I don't think anyone even really paid attention to this article until this kind of brought it to everyone's attention.
Well, and again, if they're going to say something, he decided he'd stir it up a little bit, and that's probably gotten more. Tony's comments and tweets have gotten more play and more attention amongst the wrestling fans than the original Fox News article, which I would assume, since it was majorly about the football team, most of the wrestling fans might have overlooked unless they were just reading it on, by accident.
Hey, can I ask you your opinion on something? Because in this past week, we have seen, here's Tony Khan, and it's happened before. It's happened with just fans, but here it is with Fox, where Tony Khan is kind of, you say going after someone, but he's hitting someone with facts in what I'm sure in his mind is a comeback. But he's using Twitter. Elon Musk used Twitter to go back and forth with Elizabeth Warren. Steve Cohen, who owns the Mets, just announced a new managerial hire, which is a great move. Buck Showalter, what a move. He's like the Jim Cornette of baseball.
Is that good or bad?
Without the cursing, but with all the firings. But he just announced it on Twitter. What do you think of the idea that, some older people or some people who just are against social media will say, oh my God, it's so beneath a CEO to use Twitter to get a message out there. But we're seeing it more and more, and we're seeing it from seasoned executives and very successful businessmen. Do you have any problem with Tony or any CEO of a company using Twitter in this way?
Well, no, because that's what people are reading now. We've passed the point where anybody's actually going to pick up a fucking legitimate newspaper like the Washington Post or the New York Times or whatever, or a magazine. Do they even print Time or Newsweek anymore? Everybody reads Twitter and Facebook. That's why the average fucking person in the world today is a complete fucking imbecile, because they don't read responsible journalism that's fact-checked and produced by professionals that have gone to school and trained for this. They read Facebook and Twitter. So everybody's a complete fucking idiot. So if you want to talk to the existing idiots, you got to be on Facebook or Twitter. No, I don't think he shouldn't do that, because, I mean, do you think a lot of anybody's fan base anymore is over there reading the goddamn, the New Yorker magazine, or are they reading fucking Twitter?
It's certainly the forum to use to swing public opinion.
Yes, because the average member of the public is an uninformed, unintellectual fucking moron. That's what we've done with our society. We had all the accumulated knowledge of history down through the ages in encyclopedias and libraries. We had major news institutions and news gathering sources and organizations and newspapers and magazines to keep us informed. And along comes the internet, and every jack-off can fucking announce his viewpoints to the world. And now we have a bunch of lying sacks of shit, and a bunch of gullible morons, and a bunch of complete fucking uninformed imbeciles wandering around. So progress.
But you have no problem with Tony Khan or anyone. I mean, can you imagine if you had Twitter when you were running Smoky Mountain Wrestling?
Well, I wouldn't have been saying anything to...
well, you would have been keeping kayfabe, that's true.
I was about to say I wouldn't have been saying anything to protect Smoky Mountain Wrestling, because the promotion was my enemy. That would have been Bob Armstrong's job.
So the made-up person in the office who handled social media, which would be you...
yes.
What would this guy be doing on social media? Would he be out of control?
No, he'd be pointing out the same thing. Well, you knock us, but more people watch us than watch you, so fuck off.
So no problem with Tony doing this?
No, not that.
Well, Tony was in the news for other reasons, and that makes it sound nefarious, and it isn't. But there was another clip that multiple people sent us.
This one... now, I'm not so sure about it. I took up for Tony on the last one. He did the right thing in the right forum. But this one, even though I'm involved, I heard this and I started laughing, because besides the fact that it sounded like two guys arguing, and one of them is supposedly a professional newscaster and one of them is supposedly a professional wrestling promoter, and it sounded like two guys arguing with each other over the Hot Pockets in their basement. This is
otherwise known as Zoom.
From your neck of the woods, up there in Long Island, right?
I believe so. This clip was sent around. One of the guys, there's actually two different broadcasters, newscasters. I really don't know who the hell these guys are. But the one on the top left has what appears to be a News 12 Long Island sign behind him. And of course, that was Cablevision, who had the monopoly on Long Island cable for so many years. The Dolans, that was their news station, News 12 Long Island. There's other News 12s in the area.
So is this a broadcast station, or is this cable only?
It's Channel 12 cable.
Ah.
Only if you have, well, I think now they're on other systems, but for a while they're like, we'll show you Verizon, you can't have News 12. And then they realize nobody gives a fuck about local news. And then now they can have it. But it appears they're interviewing Tony. I don't know what was used for air, if this was for online, but that's what this appears to be. And the video title that everyone sent was Tony Khan responds to Jim Cornette's criticisms against AEW 2021.
And then that's what, when I saw that, I'm like, how did I get involved in this? I wasn't even there. I wasn't on Long Island, but my name was invoked by the broadcasters.
Well, let's play a little bit of this audio, and I'll stop it in a moment and we can get your thoughts on it. But here's a brief bit of this, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Tony, everything with AEW is mostly well received. There are some who have problems with the product and the company. I mean, I'm sure you've heard, what people like Jim Cornette have had to say.
No, Jim Cornette has Jim Cornette he's 7 of the last 12 Dynamites. He's like 7 out of the last 12 shows. So you can't say he hates the show, because I think he's actually when he picks stuff apart, he's very vocal. But I believe it's something like he's liked more than he hasn't liked out of the last. And he's liked 4 out of the last 5 a lot, I think. So it's, that's something to keep an eye on.
Let me stop it right there real quick.
Well, first of all, as I said, the broadcaster was hopping all over Tony when Tony was trying to fire up there, but it sounded like somebody had their hands around Tony's neck and were choking him when he started spitting that out there. Apparently, if that was the opening of the interview, we just saw this clip. The announcer or the broadcaster was trying to get under Tony's skin early, bringing my name up, but Tony quickly jumped in. And Brian, do we have those statistics here at the Cornette Arcadian Vanguard Last Central? Do we have that statistic of how many shows out of the last how many shows that I've liked, or is he keeping better track of what we review than we do? Because I couldn't tell. If you held a gun to me and said, how many of the last however many shows have you liked, I wouldn't fucking know.
Well, if we want to keep track of that, we could certainly do that. Jace Nakarado is just amazing, and we can keep track of that. However, what is he using to quantify you liking an episode? Because if you like the beginning and the end and everything in the middle is shit, does that count as you liking the episode? If time-wise, it's the same amount of time. You see what I'm saying?
Well, there was one show here recently, a few weeks ago, we got about an hour 40 in and they hadn't fucked anything up. And then the main event, I said, fuck it, I'm not going to watch this match so I can give them the victory here. I don't know that I've ever liked anything top to bottom all the way through. I know there's a few things I haven't liked top to bottom all the way through, but I find it interesting that Tony's keeping track on them. But he's a statistics guy, right? So he should know 5 out of 6 people enjoy Venusian rim jobs more than the average, whatever.
He should put that on like the next bumper reel they use as a commercial, like 4 out of 5 Jim Cornettes approve of Dynamite.
Was that all Tony had to say?
No, there was a little bit more here. They asked if he's paying attention to what you're saying, and let's go to this, and then that'll be the end. We'll talk about this on the other side.
Are you listening to what he's saying? Are you?
I get reports of like what most major influencers in wrestling say, and keep an eye on him. I don't like listen to everything he says, but he was like a major influence on me, like growing up in wrestling. So I do, like, I don't take everything he says to heart, and I think some of his opinions are ridiculous, but I also think he thinks a lot of my opinions are ridiculous. So there's a lot of room for that in wrestling. But I do, with him and a lot of the major media people in wrestling get a report. They used to call it, when Vince got, the Finkel report, and Finkel isn't putting mine together. But I get it from various sources that are knowledgeable wrestling people, give me a lot of data about what's happening in the world of wrestling, and including what some opinionated and opinion columns and podcasts and all kinds of stuff.
Well, there it is, Tony Khan. He doesn't get a Finkel report. I don't know what he gets. Maybe a QT report, maybe a Yenta report.
A Marshall report.
Yeah, who knows? But what do you think?
Now, that was a mixed bag there. We do have now Tony Khan on tape admitting that I am a major media figure and an influencer.
A major influencer.
Major influencer. But I take issue with what he said. He said, some of my ideas or viewpoints are ridiculous, but I think some of his are ridiculous. I take issue with that. He may think some of mine are ridiculous, but I think some of his are preposterous.
Well, that clears that up.
I just wanted to make sure to clear everything up and make sure that everything's well understood. But anyway, Tony out there spreading the good word and arguing with these people. Nice.
He wasn't arguing with anyone. Everyone was smiling the whole thing. I have the video here. You make it sound like it was this contentious interview, like Vader in Kuwait.
He said, don't you dare malign the good name of Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette's been a big influence on me since I was a little bitty wee child, a little toe-headed boy.
You didn't see the video.
Running around playing with a fucking rock.
You didn't see the video. He actually does lift the finger, a little bit of a finger wag. Like, oh, no, Jim Cornette.
See, Tony secretly is a fan of mine because when somebody knocks me, he wags a finger at him.
It's just like AEW's crowd. On one side, people are members of the cult that meet next to cheese. On the other side, Jim Cornette is irrelevant. Same crowd, 20 feet apart.
Oh, God. I was hoping that they would go to town on that. But one more thing before we talk about the TV program. And basically, it was a one-match show, and what a match. But Ric Flair, this past week, I saw this. I alerted you to it. It was on the Twitter. And he's made some comments about Bryan Danielson and comments comparing Danielson to other people, including old Twinkle Toes. And I read it and I was cringing when I read this because I'm like, okay, I don't know what everybody's current relationship is, so I don't know exactly who Rick was trying to please by saying these things. But it's clear that he was either trying to please somebody by saying these things or, and this honestly may be factual also, now Rick's lost his fucking mind. Because, and you can read those in a second, then we'll talk about it, but let me just say this. Again, ever since I first saw him wrestle in the 70s, I've loved Ric Flair. I've been a fan of his as a performer. And then I got to work with him and know him. He's done so many things for me, gave me my first booking job. I consider him a friend for the last 30 years or whatever it's been. I have, in the past, defended him for things he should have and maybe even shouldn't have been defended for. But I can honestly say, even after the Dark Side of the Ring thing, we did a show on that and I gave my thoughts. There's never been anything that Ric Flair has ever done that I wasn't able to excuse, to explain, or to at least mitigate with context. Until he announced that he was going to be the main event attraction of that fucking fundraiser because he thinks it's a good idea that Donald Dipshit ought to be in the fucking White House again. And then I have to assume that all the medical problems or whatever the fuck, he's lost his fucking mind. So I normally wouldn't have brought this up, but since Ric Flair was headlining a Donald Trump fundraiser, the gloves are off and I have to call it as I see it. And he said some really, really not smart things about Bryan Danielson, especially after the performance that Bryan Danielson just put on this past week. Do you have those comments in front of you?
I do. And again, I take anything I read or hear about from Ric Flair with a grain of salt because he's a people pleaser when it comes to certain people, but also he says things that just aren't true. He's put himself in the locker room when Bruiser Brody was murdered. I think I just heard recently he said Kerry Von Erich was missing dates when they made him NWA champion, which Kerry missed lots of dates. It wasn't then.
But not during that 6 weeks or whatever it was.
No, I mean, he says things that aren't true, but he insists that they are, or he remembers them that way. I don't know if it's faulty memory. Look, not everyone's a historian. Not everyone has a great memory.
I've got to be honest and say a lot of this is faulty memory because I know a lot of the boys, not just Flair, that because they did it for 40 years and every night of the week, blah, blah, blah. I do think it is a stretch not remembering that you weren't in a locker room when a murder was committed, but a lot of this is legitimate that guys just can't remember dates, places, etc.
Right, and it may just say more about what Rick thought about Bash 88, but let's get to these quotes here. He said, I didn't say he wasn't a good worker, speaking of Danielson. When Hunter put him over, that made him. He's a very talented kid. Don't misunderstand me. But you have to have one match, one place, one day, somewhere that makes you who you are. Hunter, who only wrestles once in a while, came out and the match started off slow, but they ended up having a world-class match. He's a hell of a performer. I don't see him as being Kenny Omega. As a babyface, he's not Ricky Steamboat. As a heel, wait a minute.
Let's stop 1 second. And on that last quote, as he's not Kenny Omega. As a babyface, he's not Rick Steamboat. As a heel, he's not me. Well, no, Bryan Danielson is not Ric Flair in his prime because they're completely different styles and different people. And Flair was one of those once in a very long time talents. But Brian, let me ask you this question because I know the answer to it because I've known Ric Flair for a long fucking time. And I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this question, but I'll ask you, just see what you think. Do you think there is a chance in hell that Ric Flair has ever seen video of Kenny Olivier wrestling the 9-year-old girl or the sex toy?
Okay, interesting question. Not if he's seen Kenny Omega wrestle, but
not
if he's actually seen
wrestle,
any of the videos with that stuff. And
if he's actually seen all of that shit. Because when Flair was Booker, when Flair was the Booker of WCW, he didn't even watch all the WCW TVs. That was our job. And one of the reasons was he was on the road every fucking week too, or every night defending the title. But
he only saw it if someone put it in front of him.
Exactly. And I also know that Ric Flair, if somebody walks up to him, hey, watch this fucking match from an outlaw promotion in Japan on my phone. He'd go, what? So I guarantee you that his interaction with old Harpo has been when Harpo just had a match with his prospective son-in-law, although I hear that may be up in the air now. But that's why you think you know people and they have a level head and they're reasonable and sane, and then they say shit like that. And
you should have let me finish the quote.
Well, I've go ahead then. Keep going.
If that pisses people off, they have to live with history. That was the end of that part of the quote. So it was, well, he's not Kenny Omega. As a babyface, he's not Steamboat. As a heel, he's not me. If that pisses you off, you have to live with history.
Well, the history is that like 24 hours after Rick said that, or that came out in the press, Danielson went out and had the best world title match in AEW's history and did something that old Harpo couldn't do with Adam Page, because this match was tons better than the one that Twinkle Toes had with Adam Page. So Danielson shut Rick down by going an hour, the best AEW world title match since the company was founded, and honestly, the best television wrestling match since fucking when? How many years at this point? So Danielson just went, take that back, Rick. And went out and proved him wrong without saying a word about it. And I can't believe that. That's why I'm saying, okay, he might still be wanting to make Triple H happy because they're friends or used to be friends, is why he would say that about Danielson and that match. But why would a guy like Ric Flair, that in any other lifetime wouldn't wipe his feet on Kenny Omega after what he's done, and suddenly he says, is it because of the match with the prospective son-in-law, or is it because maybe there's some way that he thinks Harpo's going to get him into AEW since he's a VP despite the bad publicity? Why would you make an outrageous statement like that when people can look and see with their own two eyes that Bryan Danielson is so many levels above Kenny Omega that Omega couldn't see fucking Danielson's asshole with binoculars?
Maybe he doesn't want to be labeled as out of touch, as he would be if he didn't accept Omega.
As out of touch as all those people that were in the building when the house got torn down by Bryan Danielson.
Well, speaking of that, there is more to this quote here. Again, back to Danielson. Talking about Danielson and Hunter at WrestleMania 30, I believe. They tore the joint down. That is the night that made Bryan. I like him a lot personally. He's got a style. He's not AJ Styles by any means. He's a little bit smaller than AJ. He's not AJ Styles. I like his conditioning. He works hard. He'll do anything and sacrifice his body at all odds. He'll throw himself to the ground and take incredible bumps. He's a hell of a hand. You're asking me who is good and who is great. He's very good. As a babyface, it's more believable. He could sell his ass off, and when he's making a comeback, it's more fun to watch him making a comeback against bigger guys. It's harder for me to believe he's going to hold someone down. As a babyface, who is just average size but loaded with talent, I much prefer to see him fighting from underneath. And I'm just going to throw in my 2 cents real quick. Danielson's so fucking good right now as a heel.
I know. And
it's extraordinary.
Well, I don't blame Flair actually for saying that, because, and obviously Rick doesn't watch every television program and every big show. Rick sees some matches in places where he's on the scene. He's there, and that's what, or he might watch something he might be interested in every once in a while. But so I can see why because Bryan is smaller and he does have that great fire as a babyface. The people love the yes thing, but obviously Rick has not seen his forays as a heel where he's so good at being that smart-ass, smarmy, smiling little prick, which he's doing tremendously right now. So Rick is just not making himself, he's looking like he's out of touch. Old Rick there.
It hit me watching the Danielson match this week. He's like the greatest World of Sport heel ever.
Yes, there you go.
Because he keeps it entertaining. You're watching everything he's doing. You're into it. He's playing to the crowd perfectly. It's not too much. Danielson right now, I think, is doing some of the best work of his entire career.
Well, and let's go ahead and get into that then. Why don't we? The AEW show from Wednesday night, December 15th, with the long-awaited championship match with Page and Danielson. And I got to admit, starting off at the top, I'm like, what the fuck? What are they going to do here? I didn't think that anybody could do an hour with Adam Page at this point in his career and at this point in the wrestling business like that, and it would be good. And son of a gun, they did it. And because we had talked about, is it too early to put the belt on Danielson? Well, obviously, because Page just won it. It would bury him. But at the same time, Danielson didn't need to be doing no jobs, as Ernie Ladd might have said one time. And they don't do DQs because there are no rules in this fucking company except the ones that the individual wrestlers having the match impose on themselves. So, but no, it's true, right?
It's true. No, it is true. It is true.
So,
funny.
I was wondering, what the fuck are they going to do? They did it. It was perfect. And it was obviously this was a Bryan Danielson production. I'm sure that Adam Page had every bit of input in the world, and they sat down and talked about it, and Danielson was receptive and easy to work with, but he was the director of this major motion picture. And I can't see how anybody could argue with that when you take a guy with 20 years experience wrestling all over the world against every major talent in every major style, or young Adam Page, fiery babyface, who was in Ring of Honor and the Independents 3 years ago. So Bryan Danielson ran this, but as a result, it was the best match that Adam Page has ever had, by far. Because it takes two, and you got to have a leader in the dance routine. I like that they started out with it because even though a lot of people will say it was true, nobody else could follow it on the show, and the crowd was worn out. At least this way they could go. If they had started at 9 o'clock, people would have gone, oh, they're going an hour right off the bat, right? It would have been kind of a tell. You didn't really know for sure until they passed, the 30 or 35 minute mark. And then you're like, oh, okay, I think I see what they're doing.
Yeah, there were really only two options. You could start the show with it, or you could do what Watts used to do and start with 1 or 2 matches and then have that and announce throughout the whole show. We have standby matches. But, they've never really done that. So you'd have to establish that as a regular thing, which they could do. But other than that, you had to start the show with it.
But anyway, as you mentioned earlier in the program, the Cult of Meat with Extra Cheese sign guy in the Cornette face shirt was on one corner, and the Cornette is out of touch sign guy was on the other corner. And I kept thinking by the time the fucking match is over with, they got to be on each other in the crowd, but they stayed calm. I mean, we'll go through a little bit of the match. It was a 60-minute match, so we're not going to recap everything, but just this was wrestling. And now you see Bryan Danielson, he was forced to retire because of concussions, but yet he can put together and execute something like this. I'm not even talking about athletically. I'm talking about mentally, the brain power. So that now we know why he wanted to come back to wrestling and why he felt that he could wrestle. This guy don't have brain damage that's going to hinder him from doing anything as long as he's careful in the ring. But he's a smart-ass heel. Like you said, the World of Sport heel, where he's a technical wrestler, but at the same time, he's a little prick, a bell end, a wanker, if you will. He does the little things to get heat. He's smirky. He leans out for the rope breaks, but not even rushing like I'm scared, but I'm a smart-ass and I'm just going to get you away from me. doing the jumping jacks, mocking Paige, controlling the pace of the match. Paul Turner, the referee, actually got a chance to referee. I haven't seen Paul Turner used to work for us in Ring of Honor. I like the guy. He's a great guy, great referee. He's not been a referee for the last 2 years because nobody pays any attention to the referees because, as I mentioned, everybody makes up their own rules. So it was unusual in AEW. You would see this was a sporting contest, a contest for a championship with a legitimate official in there. Imagine that. I wish JR could have been there to call this one. I think it would have brought the old JR out. And for the first longest part of the match, which was smart, every time Paige would start to open up, Danielson would give him a little something and then ground him. And that way it's saved by the end of the match. Danielson had not had most of the shit kicked out of him still, and that's why there was a place to go. Paige sold well through this whole thing. Everything looked good. Nothing was rushed. This was different than almost every AEW match, which was a positive thing here. Everything made sense. Everything meant something. They gave time for it to register. Again, Danielson kept shutting Paige down because he knew they were going long. And I mean, that's Twinkle Toes' specialty is to do everything he fucking knows in the first 15 minutes of a 35-minute match, so you can't wait for it to be over with. This went 30 minutes, and I wasn't even remotely tired of watching it. They went to the first break at 20 minutes in. It seemed like the first 5 or 10 minutes. Paige, it looked like he had time to sell, so it looked like shit was having an effect on him. And you could say, and Paige really, he was a wrestler here rather than a spot guy. And the two things that they did that I will find fault with, and otherwise what was tremendous, was Paige did that blind moonsault off the top rope again. I say the blind moonsault because he turns his back on his opponent, climbs up, and just flips. And you could see by the camera angle when he's coming down, Bryan Danielson obviously, instead of just stepping to the side, reaches up and catches him. And in all the other matches, that wouldn't be a big deal because they're all fucking horseshit anyway, and you can tell. But with what they were doing here, that there was no obvious buzz killers and see-throughs, that's the kind of thing. They didn't need to do it. Paige doesn't need to do that fucking thing every match, and sooner or later, it's going to bite him in the ass. And the only other thing, it was later on in the match, but same principle, is these guys cannot do superplexes or anything off the top rope by standing on the second rope. They have to get both feet of both guys on the top rope. And that's another buzzkill, because that requires obvious visual cooperation just in terms of not trying to get away. And nobody can keep their balance when they're both on the top rope, except if the other guy's helping. Just the second rope makes all the difference, because if anybody's never been in a ring, if you get your feet on the second rope and you brace your knees on that top rope and you've got your stance, you can fucking pick people up and do shit and not fall over. But on the top rope, no, you're helping each other and it's obvious. Anyway, that's my soapbox. However, by 30 minutes in, Paige was getting a little bit more before he'd get shut back down. And, you know, it was still building. They still had room to run. Then at one point after, no, it was right before the second break, Paige went for another moonsault off onto Danielson on the floor, but this time Danielson shoved him off and he bumped off the apron. Jesus Christ, which that's trust in your own eyesight. He did a front flip off the top rope and landed back first on that apron that's 1.5 feet wide. And then Danielson posted him a few times and went in and healed the crowd while Paige got some color. And now we're halfway in, just going for the second break. And did you see the spot when they came back? Danielson runs down the apron of the ring and jumps off and gives the knee to Paige as he's standing on the floor.
Yeah.
And then got on top of him and punched him in the head because Paige was bleeding. Anybody wants to know what I'm talking about when I've been screaming about why are all these guys throwing these phony punches and why are all these fucking idiots covering up so you can't hit them anyway? It looks like shit. This is what it's supposed to look like. Page didn't cover his head up because it's bleeding and Danielson's trying to punch him in the cut and Danielson's punches were going straight to his fucking forehead. That's the way you do it. And then Danielson starts getting more vicious in the heat. He's wrapping Page's arm around the post. He's working on the cut. He does the head punches, the 10 punches in the corner. He only gave him 9, as I recall, because he didn't want to make the people happy. And the punches to the head in the corner looked good. I refer you from that spot then to later on in this show when Dante Martin was punching in the vicinity of MJF's head. Fuck. So Page is selling like a champ. And fucking Danielson's a heel. And this thing is building still at 40 minutes in. It's still building. This is what Kenny Omega is incapable of. An athletic contest with professional wrestling and not phony video game bullshit and a lack of logic. That's why he's not the best wrestler in the world, never will be, never has been. And that's why guys like Danielson have a fucking claim to being in that conversation. He's doing what Twinkle Toes been there for 2 years and not been able to do. Danielson goes for a kick to Page on the apron. Page ducks it, and Danielson kicks the post, and Page is back in control. And now we go to another break. We're 40 minutes in. And here's a comparison that Ric Flair might not agree with, but I compared Flair and Steamboat in 1989 to, it was a match, it was as far as you could go in wrestling to be entertaining while still keeping the believability of an athletic contest. That was the state of the art at that time. And then later on, when I saw Tyler Black and Davey Richards in Toronto, and they had that magic night, I said, okay, this is a little bit updated. It's still an athletic contest and a struggle, but it's entertaining. This is the kind of thing that it's about as far as you can go. If they'd gone any farther with the entertainment, it would have taken you out of the match as an athletic contest, but they still managed to retain the spirit of they were fighting over something. So I compare this to the flavor of Flair and Steamboat. Page hit a tombstone, got a big pop on a 2 count, and then they rolled over and started selling so the people could chant, "This is awesome." You notice the people never chant, "This is awesome" in the middle of the action. That's like they don't clap at a tennis match when people are still hitting the ball back and forth. They wait till somebody misses. So if you're constantly in motion, you're running off and leaving your fucking crowd. And they fought on the top buckle again, but finally Big Belly to back off the top. Danielson still all over Page. Page's juice dried up. He should have committed a little bit more, possibly. It would have added here, but nevertheless, it's all right. By the way, when we were talking about Slow Devin and his spike stabbing the other day, I mentioned the way to blade yourself, not like what that poor referee did by trying to go from coast to coast from one side of your head to the other and only scratching it like a fingernail. The idea is you make your blade, stick it in, and drag it about a half an inch or an inch, commit, boom, and you're done. Some idiot thought that I said stick the blade in about a half an inch or an inch. Is well, Cornette's crazy. Well, your skull. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Stick it in your skin and pull it about a half an inch or an inch across. Dumb shit. Anyway. So then Page finally, he hit that dead eye on the apron. And it was, Danielson's had the concussion issues. This was safe. Safe as far as his head hitting. Safe as far as just the margin of error on the apron. Still, I don't know why they do that stuff. But then Page went for just a leap. Not even a dive, but just came up to the top and went to jump off, maybe for a double sledge or whatever. off the top to the floor on Danielson, and Danielson sidestepped him, and Page went face first through the table, and that looked great. And they go to the break there because everybody's down. When they come back, Page is still fighting from underneath, but now both guys are showing the effects. And Danielson goes for another top rope belly to back, but Page landed on his feet and clotheslined Danielson a fucking flip, and they go into the 1-2 forearm exchange, but it wasn't the stupid, I'll let you hit me and then you let me hit you. And it wasn't the little flipper forearms that nobody sold. They were staggering back and forth across the ring with each blow. And at this point, and tell me if you heard this, Taz referred to Justin Roberts calling 5 minutes remaining in the match on the PA system. I never heard it. Did they not have the PA piped through to program audio?
This has happened almost every single time they've done this, and they did this, in fact, previously during the Omega Danielson 30-minute time limit draw. They do, in fact, announce it to the building, but it doesn't come through. The only way you would know it, actually, is if you listen and hear the crowd all of a sudden get quiet to hear what's being said.
So, and then the announcers referred to it, but the 5-minute call was the first one that we'd heard. Then 5 minutes left, so they went 55 minutes not calling any time. And then they wonder why, you know why the people live, I heard a lot of people saying this, arguing on Twitter and on the internet. Well, did they screw the fans by giving them a draw and a title match? You fucking morons. It's been so long since this shit was done right that the fans don't even know what the fuck's going on. For one thing, it's free TV, and for another thing, a draw in a world championship match, fucking the fans. Well, if they had never fucked the fans before, we wouldn't have drawn very much money for 100 years. But the reason why the fans live were mad, one of them is because they watched this thing go on so long, and then suddenly 5 minutes left. If you make the 5-minute calls, they're in the moment and they're apprised of what's going on, and it builds the tension. Like the wrestlers were building the tension in the ring. The 5 minutes gone, 55 minutes remaining, and then 10 minutes gone, and 15 and 20, and the clock is ticking. It adds to the tension. But when you just tell the fans in the building, there's 5 minutes left, and then ding, yeah, they're going to be pissed. And also, there's 5,000 people in the building. There's 1 million watching on television. And yes, they've been talking about how they've been going past 30 minutes and past 40 minutes. But they could have had a clock ready. Or they could have piped the ring announcer audio into the program mix so that the fans at home would have been kept apprised. They're so scared of time limit draws, like these weren't done regularly all through the history of wrestling. Anyway, so Page hits a surprise deadeye out of nowhere. It gets a big pop on a 2 count, but there were no overdone finishers. There were no preposterous moves. Everybody sold the effects of everything. And then finally now Page is really coming on in the last few minutes. This is what the people been waiting for. And he even did Danielson's stomp spot where he grabs the wrists and stomps the face, and not as good as Danielson, but he doesn't have as much practice. And then he goes for the buckshot, but Danielson gets the label lock. But Page escapes and hits a clothesline that turns Danielson inside out and is ready for the buckshot and flips in and hits the buckshot lariat. And as soon as they went down, the bell rang and the people started booing, but they didn't have the bell mic'd either. You could barely hear it. So the announcers had to say, oh, the time's expired. And why did they hit the bell on the buckshot lariat instead of the cover after the buckshot lariat? Has anybody ever watched wrestling before? You don't fucking ring the bell when the babyface just hammered the fucking guy. You wait for the babyface to crawl over as quick as he can and try to capitalize, and as soon as he hooks the leg, one, ding, 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 ding. So they need to work on their ambient sound, miking the bell, bringing the announcer into the ring announcer into the fucking program mix, and learn how to complement the incredible work that the talent in the ring, Adam Page and Bryan Danielson, did by giving them their atmosphere for the hour Broadway. Shivani's seen them. Probably nobody else in the building has. But they could do some research. But what a fucking match. That's the best AEW heavyweight championship match they've ever had, right?
I think so.
Can we think of another one?
I thought it was tremendous. I think Bryan Danielson right now is one of the most enjoyable wrestlers to watch of anyone in recent memory. And I was one of those people that for a long time thought, oh, if only AEW had CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, that would be a big match they could do. And it would be great to see them in that forum where they're not handcuffed by Vince McMahon. And both guys have gone in different ways than I thought they would. And both guys have been great. And it's just so enjoyable and everything's fresh. This match was great. World of Sport style. I mean, that's what it is. You go watch an old World of Sport match where they're doing stuff and everyone's paying attention. Everyone's into the match. Everyone knows what's going on. He is so good right now. Really love this match. Not to take anything away from Paige, but to me, this felt like the Bryan Danielson show more than anything else.
Well, and he's trying to prove a point. I'm sure he read Flair's comments, but also this is what he came to the company to do, to be the best wrestler in the world, to prove a point, to do what he enjoys after he was kept down, then forced to retire and blah, 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 and all that shit he went through.
And now you have an interesting storyline because Bryan Danielson has not been able to defeat the AEW champion, but on 2 different occasions, the AEW champion, Omega and now Paige, have been unable to beat Bryan Danielson.
It's almost like Sam Muchnick's behind this. Because it's so old, it's new. It's so simple, it's intricate. It's so easy, it's complicated. This is wrestling. And again, the best match that Adam Page has ever had. And after every time I see what this kid can do, I'm pissed off that I haven't got to see it before. He came out and did that great interview where he sounded like a top babyface, had some balls. Only 2 years into the television program. He has this, after all the rotten tag team matches that we had to watch him in with Harpo as his partner and the stinky multi-man gimmick matches, he was in one of those football field fuckery things. After the Dork Order bullshit where we had to see him palling around with job guys and riding them around on his lawnmower, finally, he can do this. Who could have known? But, and that's why if Paige, I know they didn't have Danielson for him to work with, but if Paige had been concentrated on as a single from the start, allowed to talk and wrestle singles matches against some kind of experienced opponents, imagine how much farther along he'd be right now instead of working with all this indie-rific mud show horse shit.
And I want to say also, this is exactly the kind of wrestling I want. Sports-based wrestling, where it's not too sports-based, so there's no charisma or personality, but this. Yes. This right here, and I've said it before, the best stuff in AEW is the best stuff in wrestling in years, and the worst stuff is unwatchable garbage. And the biggest problem with AEW in my eyes is you follow up perfection like this with the next I couldn't believe they followed. I couldn't believe they followed the match with that promo, and it immediately turned me off to the show. But let's get your thoughts.
Well, wait a minute. Oh, shit. I forgot. That was the one where the Hardley Boys and Adam Cole were talking, right?
And Bobby Fish.
And Bobby, yeah, I skipped that.
And there was Christmas music in the background. And
was there? I didn't even see any. I just saw their faces. I said, fuck it. It's just a pre-tape. I'm not going to ruin my mood. How bad was it?
It was all their usual comedy, and, I'm sure to them it was funny, and to me it was, how do you follow AEW? Again, AEW has segments and matches and guys that are serious and great, and it's Mid-South Wrestling 2022. And then there's this, which is fucking Kai and Tai 2022. It's not good, it's bad comedy, and it takes me out of the show when you follow a serious tone with the complete opposite.
And you know what? Watching the Hardleys or Cutlet or all of their stooge crew, and now, unfortunately, poor Adam Cole, who's, I guess, irredeemable at this point. It's like people that show you pictures of their ugly children They think they're beautiful, but nobody else wants to look at them. That's what their promos are like. They think they're hilarious, but nobody else wants to see that shit because they've fucking puked on themselves, they've shit their pants, and they got snot hanging out of their nose. But I'll tell you what we need with wrestling, like you said, sports-based presentation. That's what we were promised. That's what we got with Danielson and Page. Brian, there was some meat to that, something you could take a bite of, you could chew on, something with substance, something with taste, something that you would crave. There was meat to Page and Danielson, and all the other guys is just bones and cartilage. And that's something you're never going to get with our friends at Omaha Steaks. Folks, amazing. It's the holidays.
What an amazing transition.
It's the holidays. And I'll tell you what, you may be wondering what to get people. Well, there's one thing that's a universally common amongst all the peoples in the world. All the little chillins in the world has to eat at one point or another. Some of us eat more than others, but all of us have to do it sometime. And that's why Omaha Steaks are the perfect holiday gift, because you know they're not going to return it. It's not going to be the wrong size. It's not going to be the wrong color. And they're going to eat it, especially if they get hungry enough. So, folks, right now, if you go to omahasteaks.com and enter JCE into the search bar for the perfect gift package, guess what you're going to get? 4 bacon-wrapped filet mignons, 4 boneless chicken breasts, 4 Omaha Steaks burgers, 4 gourmet jumbo franks, 4 individual scalloped potatoes, 4 caramel apple tartlets, 1 jar of signature steak seasoning. And if you go to omahasteaks.com and use the keyword JCE in the search bar, 8 more free Omaha Steaks burgers, all in this giant package, and all for only $99.99. You can save over 50% on this package, regular price, and get 8 free burgers on top of that. omahasteaks.com, keyword JCE in the search bar. Holy mackerel, your lips will smack your brains out, and everyone will thank you because you will contribute to their holiday weight gain. Well, the next match on the program, and this didn't take long, and the review is not going to take long, Wardlow beat Matt Sydal. And pretty quick fashion, powerbomb, boom. But then the same shit. Spears comes in afterwards and beats him up with a chair. Not Wardlow, beats the poor Sydal up with a chair, and then gets the microphone and is talking to Wardlow like a stooge. So already, here, Wardlow. They've been on the air for a little over 2 years, right? Wardlow debuted a long time ago with MJF as his bodyguard / stooge, whatever, right? And easily over a year and a half ago. Within the first few weeks, they teased dissension between them, which we made fun of. Then they stopped teasing that, and they never had any more dissension until this past summer, and then they started with the dissension again. But as Wardlow, taking him as a talent, he was brought in as MJF's bodyguard and muscle, and the only time he would wrestle was in multiple man matches where he would neither get the victory nor be defeated, but he'd get a big man spot with the other big guys in AEW because, of course, get the big men together. They just forgot about the part where he should beat people in dominant fashion weeks in a row over and over again to establish that he's a big fucking dangerous monster. They did all that other shit first, and now 2 years later, he's beating people in quick fashion over and over. Is this like Japan where they read the book from back to front instead of front to back? When I'd get the Japanese Gong magazine, the wrestling magazine, it screwed me up for a while. I'm like, what the fuck? And then in Japan, and my mother got a kick out of it. She was just tickled. You look at the cover of the magazine, the spine is on the right-hand side. And you open the cover to the right and you read to the back of the book in that fashion. That's Wardlow's AEW career. I'm glad he's finally picking up those pesky wins that he could have started out with. But anyway, he beats this guy, gets talked to like a stooge. as I said, every time they do this, it's stepping on Wardlow's victory when Spears comes in and beats the guy up with a chair. But I guess now they're going to continue to do this until finally Wardlow snatches the chair out of his hand or says, hey, quit stealing my fucking spotlight or something. Who knows? Did you get anything out of this?
I love what they're doing with Wardlow in the matches. The Shawn Spears thing is what ruins it. And again, this is where you have the seriousness of Wardlow getting over, just squashing people. And then Spears is goofy. He's dressed like Jason in ECW. He's got a chair because he's the chairman.
I forgot about old Jason with the suit and no shirt.
He loves chairs, so he's always using the chair. He's talking down to Wardlow. I get it. Eventually, they're going to turn Wardlow babyface. They've been teasing the thing with him and MJF for a long time now. But it should mean something, and it won't mean as much if you have a goofy comedy guy like Spears, who means nothing from day one in AEW. He's just a guy on the roster. Why is he doing this with Wardlow? Let someone else do it. I know he's in the Pinnacle, but replace him in the fucking Pinnacle. Do whatever you got to do. Nobody cares about Shawn Spears, and I thought that took this down. The match I liked, the fans getting ready for the powerbomb and getting into it, but the Spears stuff is stupid.
The Pinnacle or the Pinochle? The Malachi Black video, I like their locations and their props, and there's a talented editor behind this. He does the voiceover with his spookiness. What did you get out of the verbal content of this video, besides the fact that he's now got a hooded stooge that he's put the House of Black necklace on, and the fucking guy, what is it with black vomit in wrestling now? But is this flowery verbiage going by so quickly that it's going past most people's fucking heads?
I don't know what.
Or is it talking in too many circles? Is there no point to come to this? It's a tease of a point that never gets hammered home somehow.
To me, and he has such a soothing voice. To me, this is perfect for Masterpiece Theater. But I don't like this kind of shit on wrestling because nobody talks like that. Nobody does that. And the rumor is, and I don't know if it's true, and I don't know if you worked with the guy because I'm not too familiar with him, AEW just signed a wrestler named Brody King, and the rumor is that's who Malachi's associate will be.
I've never met the man, so I don't know anything about him. We shall see.
So is Malachi, I mean, is he bringing in a guy to feud with the Varsity Blondes over what he did to Julia Hart?
No, I think he's just going to beat up Griff Garrison next week.
Did we get an update on Julia Hart's condition?
Oh, that comes here in a minute.
Okay.
Anyway, you'll be happy to know, Brian, that I watched the Hikaru Shida match against Serena Deeb. Aren't you happy?
Well, you're obviously happy for yourself.
Can I hear something like that?
Well, you're happy for yourself. I must admit, I'm curious to hear what you're going to have to say about the match. But I was really tired that night. And I fell asleep in the middle of the match. When I rejoined a little while later and watched the rest of the show, I meant to go back and watch that match, and I didn't. So,
son of a bitch, wouldn't you know who won the pony? You rake me over the coals for not watching these girls' matches, and then when I watch them, invariably, that's the one you missed.
I'm sorry.
Well, I didn't ask for a character reference. I will say that, and again, this match, they started off hot and fighting because immediately Serena jumped on Shida before she even got in the ring, and then Shida swung her kendo stick back, and they just started fighting. And I thought, how are they going to follow Paige and Danielson? Well, nobody's going to follow Paige and Danielson. But Serena Deeb is incredible. Great basics, timing, wrestles like a competition, not a performance. She looks like an athlete. And we mentioned not only has she worked with all the top talent, she had the WWE run. She was trained in OVW. Rip Rogers, again, the magic that he works with people having an understanding of wrestling. But at the same time, she's being penalized. Like Arn Anderson used to be the guy to drop the fall for the Horsemen most of the time because, Arn's a great worker. You can always beat a great worker. They can keep their heat. But that's if you get them over to begin with. Serena is doing enough jobs that they're going to nullify her benefit to the company, which is she's not only a great in-ring wrestler, but she's also she's been a trainer before, and she's been in that position, and she could help all these girls. But at the same time, you've got to give her credibility with at least some series of wins, or elsewise, then you're just putting the best women's wrestler on the roster out there and beating her every fucking week. But anyway, she did the modified Bret Hart figure 4 around the post. This went through a break, but it wasn't nearly as bad as most AEW women's matches. And Shida kept up. If she could work with somebody like Serena regularly, on a more regular basis, I'm not just saying Serena, but other people like Serena, veterans, experienced, her basics would improve and she would learn just like all the other girls would. But as I said, especially if they don't take care of Serena's, aura, there's not enough Serena to go around. But having said that, Shida is certainly much better than Riho or Freddie Mercury or the rest of them they found. But this was a Serena Deeb show until she pulls off the turnbuckle pad. But there was still a pad on the buckle underneath the fucking pad. Did you see that? No, you didn't see it because you fucking went to sleep. She pulls the turnbuckle pad off, Serena the heel, like she's going to run Shida into it, but there was a smaller pad. I've never seen a turnbuckle with 2 pads. So they did a finish where Serena got kicked into what was supposed to be the exposed turnbuckle, but there was a little pad on the fucking buckle. So they went back and forth, and then finally Serena gets kicked off into the buckle. She goes head first and gets pinned 1, 2, 3. So again, it's kind of insulting not only to have this girl come and teach these girls on the job, but then have to put them over too. But anyway.
The Arn Anderson comparison is really interesting because I think that's correct. I was a big fan of Arn. And after a while, Arn didn't really win matches.
Yeah.
But you still love him. And we've seen Serena Deeb. We've even seen her with a belt.
But they got him over first. He won a ton of matches first, and then you had the funds in his account to have him do some jobs. Go ahead.
But we've seen Serena Deeb in various matches, including matches where she wore a belt, the NWA belt, but it feels like she never wins. And again, her, Thunder Rosa, there are a few people there. They have their shit down better, and like you said, Shida needs to work more with someone like that.
They're professionals.
They're professionals, and they just carry themselves different. They have a different aura, and they go about things a different way. And it's not just running and springing and jumping like they've learned on their trampoline. Anyway, now you talked about the blondes, and what are they going to do about Julia? Yeah, so I missed this too. Yeah.
Oh, boy, howdy. Tony Schiavone's in the back with Griff and Pillman Jr. No Julia. Obviously, she's been injured. And Griff started. And Griff recited some very bad high school drama class lines in a passionless way, in a way that nobody would talk if they were really mad, except if he's just a big fucking pussy. And since he does look like Pippi Longstocking at a sex change operation, there's potentially that. But this was fucking bad. And he said, and next week, Malachi Black, and Pillman jumps in and is like, no, hold on. That's what he wants you to do. Because apparently they've told him, say, that's what he wants you to do. He wants you to fight him. Don't give him what he wants. But Griff turns around and now he's arguing with Pillman. What, are you on his side? Well, look what he did to Julia. And he shoves Pillman, and Pillman backs up like, whoa, dude. I don't know whether Griff lost himself and thought that he was supposed to be arguing with his partner or whatever, but this was it was in no way believable. And Griff just looks preposterous with that fucking hair. And he is not experienced enough yet or a good enough speaker on television to carry something like this off. And I'm starting to think that they're doing these backstage pre-tapes, as I call them, live, because nobody would fucking air these things. If they weren't live, they'd shoot it again, one would think. So they must be doing these live. That's what happened there. So next week, it's going to be Griff against Malachi Black. And Griff says he's going to break Malachi Black's jaw. And I wouldn't hold my breath for that. And then...
For the record, wasn't Pippi Longstocking a redhead?
I don't know. I just remember the fucking pigtails. Eddie Kingston did a promo about Friday night's 10-man tag that we refused to watch because, yeah, what happened to his push and everything. Anyway, here we come, the main event segment of the evening. The finals of the Dynamite Diamond Ring Battle Royal from last week. MJF and Dante Martin were the last two, and now they're going to meet in a singles match to determine who gets the Diamond Ring. But MJF comes out and cuts promo first. He's in Texas. And so his first line, this place is a goddamn dump. And then Texas, your daughter swallows. Holy shit. But this is why the announcer shouldn't cuss. And this is why every Tom, Dick, and Harry on the card shouldn't cuss. Because that way the top heel can come out and do it. And it's not fucking repetitive gratuitousness, but rather you get mad at that guy. And he does a promo on Punk and talked about his streak of wins over job guys, which makes you the new Ryback. That was fucking classic.
That was good.
And said that Dante, then he segued into Dante Martin and said Dante has the charisma and verbal ability of Helen Keller on Quaaludes, which was a wonderful picture. And then here we go. Here comes Dante moping his way out. If Dante was on Beale Street in Memphis in the 50s with Sputnik Monroe, he would have been arrested and sentenced to jail for mopery because he just mopes. He's a great athlete, amazing athlete. And did you see the forward into the reverse leapfrog? Like everybody does a forward leapfrog, and Snuka and some of those guys used to do the backward leapfrog.
Yeah.
But Dante did a forward into a backward. He started forward and spun in midair and landed looking back behind him. Amazing athlete. Greener than a pepper tree, and this match showed it. And they shouldn't have given him this long. I know they're trying to push the fucking kid, and he should be pushed. Maybe not right now, but he's definitely a keeper for the future and a project. But when they give him this long on national television, especially with a match we've just seen previously, it doesn't get him over. It exposes his weaknesses. Get him in and get him out in 7 or 8 minutes where you can just do the things he can do. And MJF was trying to let him, because MJF was going over, so he wanted to be not a prick. He was trying to give him every opportunity, but my God, did you see not far into the match, Dante comes out of the corner with a forward roll as MJF is laying there, and instead of that whole forward roll into a thing is just extra bullshit, but he jumped up in the air and did a forward somersault and was trying to land with a splash and landed with a knee drop on MJF's jaw and throat. And I got hot as soon as I saw it. And MJF, I'm sure he felt it. It apparently didn't hurt him as bad as I was afraid it did when I saw it. But he rolled out and rolled out again, rolled back in and rolled out again, like he was saying, fuck it. Let me get my shit together and let this fucking goof calm down a little bit. And then they go ahead.
He's so good. I didn't watch it back, but I thought when I was watching it, I think he got him in the face. MJF is so good at selling, I wasn't certain what happened. That's how good he was.
Yeah, well, if he had been 6 inches to the left, Dante, he would have brought his knee down right on MJF's face and nose from several feet in the air. But as it was, his knee landed on MJF's neck, which could have been bad, but maybe enough of his collarbone got it, and MJF selling his jaw, but that wasn't what he was supposed to do. And so they went to the heat spot, which was MJF shoving Dante off the top rope onto the floor to start the heat. And they go to the break and they come back, and it just, Dante, he has no physique. He has no fire to his facials or to his body language. A monotone face. I mean, Gargano looks like a goddamn silent movie actor compared to fucking Dante. He hit multiple dives. MJF would keep rolling out and Dante'd do another dive. And finally, he did a springboard backflip off the top rope to MJF on the floor and went completely over his head. And MJF caught like Dante's right foot on the way by and grabbed it and went down with it. But Dante did a backflip off the top rope and landed face first on the floor and hopped right up. And MJF is the one that was selling it. And the announcer said, oh, wait, Dante caught him with his right knee. No, he didn't. That's why they didn't replay it. And I'm not trying to knock fucking Dante. This is not fair to a guy like Dante Martin, who I say is a tremendous prospect and what an athlete. But there is no way that he's ready for national TV doing anything except his gymnastics. And he was off on some of those. This is where there needs to be a middle ground between the indies and national television, between science and superstition, because he's not ready. The 10 punches in the corner, he gets MJF in the back, and he was throwing punches to MJF's left shoulder vicinity, supposedly hitting him in the head or face or whatever. And it was so bad that the director, for one split second, took a shot from the side of his fist and, oh shit, and went to the other side. He couldn't take a shot of it. This kid has to work on personality, facials, basics, get in the gym, age a couple of years. They're going to shove him before he's ready to do anything but this flipping stuff, and he's going to be pigeonholed as a sloppy, flippy guy. And then finally, Dante hits the springboard double jump moonsault that he does. Barely. MJF was standing there, but Dante almost went right past him, and MJF had to get under it. And then suddenly, Ricky Starks appears at ringside and puts MJF's leg on the ropes out of nowhere and breaks up the count. And then Dante gets up and acknowledges the presence of Starks and turns around to go pick up MJF, and MJF just gets the fucking Fujiwara armbar on him, and Dante taps out. So not a good match, rotten finish, and MJF should not need interference from somebody that's not even related to him to beat Dante Martin. Why didn't he use the Dynamite diamond ring that he already has, much less his new one he's about to win, knock him goofy, and beat him with a headlock takeover? That would have made sense with his interview. That would have made sense with what he did with Darby. And that would have put some heat on MJF. As it was, out of nowhere, Stark shows up, involves himself, leaves, and then MJF just takes the guy down and taps him out. Fuck. Before we talk about the afterbirth, what'd you think?
I thought it was all right. You know, this is where I'm glad that they started the show with the 60-minute draw match, because I feel like seeing the rest of the show, you kind of had to. And this match had to be far away from that so that hopefully you got a little bit of the crowd back. It looked like you had a really excited, overzealous kid doing a lot of stuff that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. I think MJF did all he could. I think MJF's a young ring general in there, but
yeah,
you had a guy, if you don't know where he's going to land, there's only so much you could do. The spot where he hit MJF in the face, I thought he got him hard. I wasn't certain. There were several dives where I thought because it wasn't at MJF had to move in an unnatural way from where he was. I was afraid he was going to tear his knee or something.
Yeah.
On one of those. Dante has a lot of potential, but this is one of the problems. He has a lot of potential, but AEW doesn't have too many places to send him other than onto TV. But there are people there who show enough that, like you said, facial expressions. He hasn't learned that on the indies. He's young. He hasn't been on the indies forever. He didn't learn that on the indies. How's he going to learn it now? So, there probably needs to be a system where you do take some of these guys off TV for at least 6 months and just learn the basics, reinforce the basics, the Rip Rogers course, whatever you want to call it.
If he got in the gym, Dante, and got a little bit more weight on his body, he'd be great in a mask. Because you cover that face up with something more attractive, I guess is the only way to say it. Remember, Jerry Stubbs was great as Mr. Olympia.
Tremendous as Mr. Olympia, yeah.
As Jerry Stubbs, he was peahead and bald. But,
I'm not saying Dante Martin needs to wear a mask.
I am. Cover that fucking face up, because that face it's droopy. He's not excited, not happy, not mad, not anything. He's confused. It's a confused looking face. It has to be the whole package. If you've got, remember that, what was her name? Susan Boyle, that won that singing competition. She looked like a mud fence and sang like a goddamn opera star, and it didn't fit, right? And part of the reason why that she won was because it didn't fit. You wouldn't think that voice was coming out of it. Well, if you've got a guy with that athletic ability, but absolutely no personality in his face until he gets older and gets some, put a cool looking mask on him and make him the kid's hero that does all the flying and acrobatics and everything. And he's got a cool outfit for the kids and keep it short and let him learn. I don't know. But anyway, the afterbirth. So FTR come out to the ring to celebrate with MJF because they are part of the Pinnacle whenever it suits the storyline. Even though Wardlow and Spears didn't come out, and there's no Tully, but FTR came out to pick MJF up and celebrate in the ring so that we could have a blackout. And after what happened last week, everybody was thinking, well, this is the Briscoes. But no. The lights come back on, and it's Sting and Darby. And they have a big fight, and finally the numbers advantage takes over, and the heels are kicking the shit out of them, and then suddenly, like Mussolini, with a baseball bat, here comes Punk with a baseball bat, and the heels powder. And Punk grabs the microphone and challenges for a 6-man tag, which I am looking forward to. FTR and MJF against Darby, Sting, and Punk next week. And because I was afraid they were teasing that Sting and Tully were actually going to be getting at it. But that'll be a good 6-man and a nice ratings thing. Of course, I sense FTR getting a shit kicked out of them again. But did you see Punk's T-shirt?
You talking about the T-shirt for women's rights?
Yes.
Or women's health? What am I supposed to say?
Women, well, basically
reproductive rights.
Common sense.
Yes.
And medicine over superstition. We could just say it like that. He's in Texas. I used to live there. I have friends in Texas. I love many of the places and things in Texas, but there's a lot of fucking redneck Republican assholes. And that's where they're starting the groundswell of trying to deny women across the country their reproductive rights on behalf of an invisible, fictitious supreme being. So Punk hits the ring in Texas to make the babyface save and challenge for next week wearing a T-shirt with a diagram of the fallopian tubes or whatever, and the thing says, you get your own and then tell it what to do. And I have to think, and let's face it, the AEW crowd, one thing you can say, it's a younger crowd, so they're probably all predominantly, I won't say pro-choice and pro-life, I will say pro-medicine and anti-medicine. They're probably all pro-medicine. But I have to I just love the finger to the general Texas society that feels like we should all be living back in the fucking dark ages. So that was a nice little thing to see on the way out. Now, having said all that, what were the ratings on this program from Wednesday night, and what part of Page and Danielson was the highest viewed segment?
I'll have to get you the quarterly breakdowns, but I can tell you the overall rating was 948,000 viewers, up from the previous week, which was 872,000 viewers.
It's a match I honestly thought they'd crack 1 million. It's a match they've been promoting. It was anticipated. If I were them, I think for one of the holiday weekends on Rampage, why don't they just show the whole goddamn match over again instead of the bogus cosplayers on Friday night that they've been giving us? Everybody should see that match. That would do more to get AEW over with wrestling fans that don't watch wrestling anymore than anything else they could do or anybody they could sign. If you just, hey, you don't watch wrestling anymore because it's all fucking and horse shit, watch this. We do this over here. That would get some more lapsed fans to watch AEW because you don't see wrestling anymore on television.
Okay, have the quarterly break.
But anyway, the quarterlies, and again, I would have figured it would have been over 1 million, but I heard that one of the quarters for Page and Danielson was. Go ahead.
The first quarter, obviously the first 4 quarters are this match. The first quarter did 947,000 viewers. The second quarter did 963,000 viewers. The third quarter went to 943,000 viewers. And the fourth quarter was at 1,035,000 viewers. So there's the first hour of the show.
And you know what? It doesn't make sense why anybody would have stopped watching this match in the third quarter. I can't see if you're watching a wrestling program why you would change channel on this match, but it does make sense in that for those with short attention spans, it was building for the first 2 quarters. Then they realized about the time we all did, they're going an hour. So they tuned out for a little while, and then more of them came back for the finish.
Coming out of that, the fifth quarter, which I believe was still Danielson Page, and then that led into the Bucks promo and the Wardlow match, was still at 1,035,000. The sixth quarter, so now that match is off the books.
But I was about to say, now we've seen the Hardley Boys. Where are we going from here?
855,000.
Wow!
Then the next quarter, 873,000. And the final quarter, I believe this is the final quarter, MJF versus Dante Martin, 936,000. So it went back up for that match.
So basically, there were 1 million people watching until the Hardley Boys popped up, and they ran 150,000 off. But then after the next 15 minutes or so, people said, well, they're not wrestling, so we're safe. We can go back. And they went back for MJF.
See, that's my point, too. And it's not even about harping on the Young Bucks and what we think about them. That's well established. To put any comedy segment or anything goofy after that match, to me, is a major turnoff. That was the moment. You had to figure the audience was going to probably grow throughout the match, peaking at the end. That's when the next thing you show is Punk, or someone you know people are going to be looking forward to see throughout the rest of the show. Instead, they went to interstitial comedy. They went to a little bit, and then the rest of the show just moved on. That was the point. Let's hook people for the rest of the show. And they didn't. In my eyes, they didn't.
Well, apparently in Nielsen's eyes, they didn't either. But there you have it. That's what happened.
It certainly did, and it certainly will again next week. But we won't be covering, what are we going to do? We're not talking about Dynamite.
Well, no, here's what we're going to do on the drive-thru is anything on any program that happens of any interest, we will be there for you on the drive-thru, and the on-the-bus episodes of the experience will entertain you, the listeners, for your Christmas and New Year's weekends.
And if anything big happens and you just can't wait for the drive-thru, if it's that big, we'll probably do an update on the YouTube channel. So subscribe today.
As Boyd Pierce used to say, how tough is tough, how rough is rough, how big is big. He used to say that. You remember him saying that.
I do. How did it fit into the context of what we were just talking about?
Because you said if anything big happens.
Oh.
Well, If news breaks, we'll fix it. Anyway, all right, closing thoughts. Brian, you want to wish everybody happy something?
Absolutely. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Everyone already had a happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa, whatever you're celebrating. We hope you enjoy it. We hope you spend time with your family, your friends, and thank you for listening to this show throughout the year.
And also happy winter solstice and Chinooka. All right, folks. I did wish somebody on the Cameo this week a happy Chinooka. Smokey Robinson, you're a miracle. Anyway, folks, Merry Christmas, guys. And we'll talk to you before the new year, but Merry Christmas. Thank you guys for listening over the past year. I won't even say fuck you to sign off. I'll just say we're done for now, but we'll be back soon. Have an enjoyable holiday. Ho, 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 and Merry Christmas.